Chapter 506. From among the cultivators who had fallen into misfortune in the mine, Wuxia selected 8 heaven immortals as his disciples. After that, he dressed them in black Taoist robes and brought them to Miaoying Palace. With the medallion given by goddess Miao Xian, Wuxia entered Miaoying Palace safely. Led by a few disciples of Miaoying Palace, Wuxia came all the way to the door of the side hall where Lu Buwei resided. Right when Wuxia came to the entrance of the hall, he immediately felt a cold breeze caressing his face, and the thread of life force in his body was nearly extinguished by the cold breeze. The 8 heaven immortals following behind Wuxia shuddered and glanced around in fear, not daring to raise their heads. Bowing their heads like a child bride who had been bullied, they followed behind Wuxia cautiously, not daring to take a single step away from him. Wuxia smiled and said in a clear voice, "Supervisor Lu, the guests are here." The door of the side hall opened abruptly, and Lu Buwei walked out with a bright smile on his face. He turned to Wuxia and said, "My fellow Taoist Wu Wang is here. What an honorable guest. Somebody serve me some tea, and bring me a pot of green jade pearls that Patriarch has given me a few days ago." Letting Lu Buwei hold his hand, Wuxia and Lu Buwei walked into the side hall with their arms around each other's shoulders. He noticed that Lu Buwei's eyes were quickly glancing at the 8 heaven immortals behind him, his eyes filled with regret and greed. Wuxia found it funny that Lu Buwei did not make his move earlier. "Now that all these heaven immortals are in my pocket, it is impossible for you, Lu Buwei, to take them back." They walked into the side hall. It was empty inside, and the furnishings were very simple. In the large hall, there were only a few screens blocking the living area. In the middle of the hall, there was a round table and a few round stools on both sides. Apart from that, there was nothing else. Behind the screen, there were faint shadows of people moving about. One could hear the clanking of ornaments, and there was even a faint fragrance of women. It was evident that there were beauties in Lu Buwei's living quarters, and quite a few of them. Holding Wuqia's hand, Lu Buwei sat down beside the round table, then laughed and said, "Those few little girls, do you like them?" Wuxia smiled faintly and spouted a bunch of nonsense as soon as he opened his mouth. Abundant primordial yin, a delicate and soft body, truly an excellent cauldron. Manager Lu has worked hard. Ha ha ha, if there are more beauties like this in the future, Manager Lu can just send them to me. With a trace of lust on his face, Wuxia pointed at the figures behind the screen and said with a smile, "Steward Lu, you're quite lucky to be here." Lu Buwei threw his head back and roared with laughter. He nodded and said, "It is the true nature of a gentleman to be a romantic man. Fellow Taoist, you and I are kindred spirits. You should communicate with me more often in the future." While saying that, Lu Buwei's eyes were flickering, as he was scrutinizing the changes in Wuqia's expression without blinking. Wuxia pretended that he did not see Lu Buwei peeking at him, and said with a smile, "That's what I should do. Although I'm the manager of the mine, I can't leave Miaoying Palace, and it is very difficult for me to find a few good girls. I'll have to rely on Manager Lu's help in this area in the future." Lu Buwei agreed hastily. Wuxia had just joined Miaoying Palace. Although he had presented the fragrant Ganoderma to goddess Miao Xian, which earned him some favor, as a cultivator from the Fiend League had the weakest sense of humanity, the favor was only enough to save his life and allow him to become an outer sect disciple of Miaoying Palace. On top of that, Wuxia did not spend any effort to curry favor with goddess Miao Xian. As a result, his relationship with goddess Miao Xian was not as good as Lu Buwei, who had served Patriarch Miaoying well, and had the right to enter Miaoying Palace at any time. Lu Buwei was more than happy to go out and look for a few beautiful girls, sending them to Wuxia to win him over. With the help of Lao Ai and his disciple, goddess Miao Xian, and Lord Longyang, King Zhongqiu's spy, Wuxia did not have to worry about the changes in Miaoying Palace. He had spared no effort in flattering Lu Buwei, focusing on building a closer relationship with Lu Buwei. He knew Lu Buwei's past like the back of his hand, but Lu Buwei knew nothing about Taoist Wu Wang, who Wuxia had transformed into. Lu Buwei felt that every word spoken by Wuxia was right on the spot that he was most proud of. Every word made him feel at ease, and made him consider Wuxia as his bosom friend. With the excuse that Lu Buwei had taken the initiative to win him over, Wuqi would visit Lu Buwei every 2 to 3 days to discuss all sorts of affairs, including some strange anecdotes. Supported by all sorts of bizarre records found in the Scroll of Stealing, Wuqi had perfectly played the role of an itinerant cultivator who had seen a lot of things. The things Wuqi told to Lu Buwei made Lu Buwei gasp in amazement, and made him feel a little closer to Wuqi. No matter how he looked at it, Wuqi was just an ordinary nascent soul itinerant cultivator from the Fiend League, who was lucky enough to find a clump of fragrant Ganoderma and offer it to goddess Miao Xian. As Lu Buwei had transcended his heaven immortal tribulation and attained the overall strength of a heaven immortal, he believed that Taoist Wu Wang could be subdued, and he could be taken in as his trusted subordinate. Even though Lu Buwei was as cunning as a ghost, he would never think that a mere nascent soul fiend cultivator could pose any threat to him. As for the fact that Wuqi had snatched the position of the mine's supervisor from him, after a thorough consideration and analysis, Lu Buwei finally came to the conclusion that it was just a lucky move by Wuqi. Lu Buwei firmly believed that as he continued to have more dealings with real immortal cultivators, he would never have to suffer such an unexpected failure again. During the last 3 months, Wuqi had been trying his best to build a relationship with Lu Buwei. As the relationship between them grew deeper and deeper, Wuqi had faintly shown a gesture of drawing closer to Lu Buwei, and Lu Buwei had also implicitly expressed his acceptance. Delightedly, Lu Buwei believed that as long as the time and opportunity were ripe, Wuqi would naturally become his trusted right-hand man. At that point of time, the over 10,000 cultivators under Wuqi's control would become Lu Buwei's force. Taking the opportunity of visiting Lu Buwei during the last 3 months, Wuqi finally found out Patriarch Miao Ying's daily routine. Every 18 days, the land of 9 negate Yang beneath the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean would spew out a thread of innate evil energy of utmost een. This thread of innate evil energy of utmost een was extremely vicious and cruel. If an ordinary gold immortal accidentally touched it, his immortal body would immediately turn into a puddle of filthy water, and his immortal soul would be infected by the evil energy as well, turning from an immortal soul into a ferocious soul without sentience and emotions, acting only on instinct. Eventually, he would be sucked into the 9 nether hell, and transformed into a nether yaksha in the Yellow Spring. This innate evil energy of utmost een would erupt once every 18 days, and it would last for 49 days. Therefore, Patriarch Miaoing would sneak into the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean every 18 days, using the innate evil energy of utmost een to craft fiend treasures. Because she had to exhaust all her energy and spirit to craft the fiend treasures, every 49 days, when Patriarch Miaoing returned to Miaoing Palace for a rest, she would need to replenish her energy with some external force. As the fiend technique cultivated by Patriarch Miaoing was extremely vicious and bizarre, the fastest way for her to replenish her energy was to pluck virgin boys from the 7-kill realm. With just 7 virgin boys from the 7-kill realm, Patriarch Miaoing would be able to completely replenish her energy essence in just 18 days. Intentionally or unintentionally, Lu Buwei told Wuqi that he had personally helped Patriarch Miaoing recover her energy essence, and had witnessed how she plucked those virgin boys from the 7-kill realm. He gave Wuqi a vivid description of Patriarch Miao Ying's live erotic experience, using it to show off to Wuqi his position in Patriarch Miao Ying's heart. Since he was able to serve Patriarch Miaoing in the Grand Hall, it proved that he was her trusted subordinate. Lu Buwei was trying to subdue Wuqi with this excuse, so that Wuqi would be intimidated by his identity as Patriarch Miao Ying's trusted subordinate, making him submit to him more willingly. With that, he would be able to control the over 10,000 cultivators in Wuqi's hands. Wuqi followed Lu Buwei's plan, and after listening to Lu Buwei's private story, he showed signs of fully submitting to Lu Buwei. While Wuqi had the intention to curry favor with her, Lu Buwei had the intention to use Patriarch Miao Ying's tiger skin to show off. Both of them hit it off immediately, and soon they became very close to each other. Through Lu Buwei and some information Duke of Longyang obtained from King Zhangqiu, Wuqi gradually analyzed some of Patriarch Miao Ying's secrets. Then, through the celestial fiend puppet, he sent them to Su Qin, who was far away in Anhe City. Lu Buwei only knew that Patriarch Miaoing would come out once every 18 days, and after 18 days of rest, She would go back to the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean to refine her magical treasure for 49 days. But through Duke of Longyang, Wuqi learned that when Patriarch Miaoying was refining her magical treasure, she could not move her body at all, and any slight movement would put her at risk of suffering from qi deviation. Therefore, Patriarch Miaoying had sealed off the entrance of the dark abyss with an extremely powerful fiend formation, and had even arranged a set of vicious fiend treasures around her as a defensive item. The reason why King Zhangqiu came to Miaoying Palace was that Patriarch Miaoying's refining of her magical treasure had reached a critical juncture, and he had brought a group of elite subordinates to protect her. In the past, when Patriarch Miaoying was refining a fiend treasure, she could still spare a tiny bit of her attention to control the fiend treasure and the fiend formation to protect herself. But at this critical juncture, every time she refined a magical treasure, she had no time to spare for other things. On the surface, King Zhangqiu came to Miaoying Palace with a dozen guards, but in fact, he was hiding somewhere near the Northern Ocean. He had brought an army with him, and they were hiding in the depths of a lake, ready to rush over at any time. All the intelligence was sent back to Anhe City by Wuqi, so that Su Qin could analyze and make use of it. As the days went by, the friendship between Wuqi and Lu Buwei grew closer and closer. Patriarch Miaoying had devoted all her attention to refining the fiend treasure, and paid no attention to anything else. As goddess Miao Xian had been bewitched by Lao Ai, she was nowhere to be seen in Miaoying Palace. King Zhangqiu was just a guest, and he lived in seclusion, rarely involved in any affairs. Unknowingly, Lu Buwei and Wuqi, the two chief stewards who were merely outer sect disciples, had become the people with real power in Miaoying Palace, who were in charge of the daily affairs of Miaoying Palace. Those official disciples of Miaoying Palace strictly abided by the sect rules and commandments. They just stayed at their posts and paid no attention to anything else. With Lu Buwei's trust, Wuqi was able to leave the Northern Ocean from time to take a stroll around, seizing the opportunity to deploy some inconspicuous but deadly traps. Time went by, and on the third day after Patriarch Miaoying entered the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean once again to refine the fiend treasure, the celestial fiend puppet of Anhe City came with a message. Reverend Li Yang of Green City had arrived at Greenwood Mountain with 6 gold immortal elders and nearly 100 heaven immortals. Wuqi sprung into action immediately. Chapter 507. Outside Anhe City, Greenwood Mountain was shrouded in immortal clouds and filled with a fragrant breeze. More than 100 white cranes were hovering in the sky, and a few rainbows rose from a lake in the Greenwood Mountain, wrapping the entire mountaintop in rainbows. The entire mountain was covered in rainbow-colored halos that sprinkled down from the sky. Taoist Yunzong stood proudly at the entrance of Greenwood Mountain, bowing respectfully to Reverend Li Yang, who was descending from the white cloud. Taoist Yunzong kept shouting, "Master, may he live a long life and enjoy immortal happiness forever," while the disciples of Euphoria Heavenly Palace behind him followed suit and bowed. The handsome Reverend Li Yang laughed out loud, stroking his beard complacently as he chatted with 6 Green City elders standing next to him. Only then did he step forward and help Taoist Yunzong up. The current palace master of Euphoria Heavenly Palace, Lao Ai, who was transformed from a celestial fiend puppet, stood respectfully next to Taoist Yunzong, bowing and greeting Reverend Li Yang with a big smile on his face. Next to Lao Ai was another celestial fiend puppet, Taoist Greed, whom Wuqi had summoned from afar. He followed closely behind Taoist Yunzong, greeting Reverend Li Yang with a big smile on his face. Reverend Li Yang and the other gold immortals glanced disapprovingly at the 2 celestial fiend puppets. The aura emanated from the 2 puppets was not very strong. One of them was a nascent divinity cultivator, while the other was a nascent soul cultivator. In the eyes of these gold immortals, be it Lao Ai or Taoist Greed, they were just tools they used to control Anhe City. They were people who could not even be considered as ants, and they did not need to pay too much attention to them. The immortals of Green City were just glad that they had built a foundation on Pangu Continent, an entire county of Anlu County. What made them even prouder was that they did not spend much effort to build this foundation. It was like a pie falling from the sky. What could be more ideal than this? It was not an easy task to dig out a piece of land from the conservative and stubborn imperial court of Du these days. Without going through bloody struggles and arduous negotiations, one could forget about getting a mountain from Du's imperial court, let alone a county. Daoist Yunzong had done a perfect job, as the entire county had fallen into his hands for no reason. Whose disciple was Daoist Yunzong? He was Reverend Li Yang's disciple. With such a great contribution, Reverend Li Yang felt proud, and he was very happy. The credit would bring Reverend Li Yang great benefits as well. At least, his right to speak in Green City would be greatly increased. All the immortals in Green City were grinning from ear to ear. Greeted by Daoist Yunzong, and served eagerly by Lao Ai and Daoist Greed, over 100 immortals from Green City walked into Greenwood Mountain with their sleeves fluttering, and began to tour the various buildings and decorations in Green City Manor. Wuxia had spent a great deal of effort to decorate the Qingqing Villa, so everything was naturally beautiful, and he strived to make it as perfect as possible. Led by Daoist Yunzong, Reverend Li Yang toured the entire mountain. He could not stop praising the place. And the 6 elders of Green City who came with him were the same. They all thought that this Green City Manor was indeed splendid and magnificent, and was worthy of the prestigious reputation of Green City. While Greenwood Mountain was bustling with noise and excitement, Wuxia tidied up his robe, and brought all his personal belongings into the mine under the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean. After ordering all the Yikshaws to stay in the mine and not leave without permission, he strode out of the mine. After walking out of the mine and entering through the main entrance of Miaoying Palace, Wuxia held a medallion made of white bone in his hand as he walked quickly through the palace. It did not take him long to come before a lofty palace. This palace was the storehouse where all the refined Nether Ocean dark gold copper were stored. All the refined Nether Ocean dark gold copper over the past 2 years were stored here. The Nether Ocean dark gold copper had a very strange property, as no natural energy could be found within 1 mile around it, as all the natural energy would be completely absorbed by it. Therefore, no immortal would carry the Nether Ocean dark gold copper with them, as it was used to absorb the natural energy, which was a great trouble for immortals. Outside the storehouse stood 6 disciples of Miaoying Palace, clad in black Daoist robes, their faces pale as a sheet. When they saw Wuxia approaching, they fixed their eyes on Wuxia at the same time. 2 of them took a step forward and stopped Wuxia with their hands outstretched, hinting at him to keep away from the storehouse. Wuxia fished out the medallion made of white bone, waved it in front of them, and said in a deep voice, "Goddess has sent me here to count the Nether Ocean dark gold copper in the storehouse. In a few days, a disciple of a great bodhisattva will finish his apprenticeship, and Goddess will prepare a gift for him." After giving the medallion a careful examination, the 6 disciples took a few steps back at the same time, and opened the door of the storehouse. Goddess Miao Xian had a good relationship with many almighty experts from the outer heavenly realms. Ever since Lu Buwei suggested that she began to mine the Nether Ocean dark gold copper at the bottom of the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean, this rare and precious mineral had become a powerful tool for her to make friends from all over the world. When a disciple finished his apprenticeship, she would give him 2 to 3 taels of Nether Ocean dark gold copper, and that was a great favor. The medallion was not fake, as it was indeed one of the many medallions Goddess Miao Xian carried with her. Only those who carried out Goddess Miao Xian's orders would be given such a medallion. With such a medallion, and the fact that Wuxia had told them that Goddess Miao Xian was preparing a gift for him, who would doubt his words? The door of the storehouse opened, and Wuxia strode into it. In the middle of the spacious hall was a table, placed neatly on top of which was a pile of palm-sized, rectangular metal ingots. These metal ingots were glinting with a dazzling blue and fiery red gleam. They were the pure Nether Ocean dark gold copper. Apart from 1 piece of Nether Ocean dark gold copper, all the other metal ingots were put into the Black Dragon Spirit Ring by Wuxia. After that, he patted his sleeves and strode out of the storehouse, closing the door behind him. Miaoying Palace had a strict rule. When Wuxia was doing what he was doing, none of the 6 black-clothed Taoists dared to turn around and look at Wuxia with their divine will. Therefore, Wuxia was able to put away these immeasurable materials, which could be used to craft gold immortal items, into his pouch without any danger. All the nether ocean dark gold copper were tightly wrapped in a thread of innate earth energy by Wuxia, temporarily preventing them from absorbing the natural energies. Without bidding farewell to the 6 black-clothed Taoists, Wuxia clasped his hands behind his back and strode out of the storehouse. It was not until he was about 1 mile away from the storehouse and went past a few palaces and pavilions that Wuqi's back suddenly broke out in cold sweat. Weighing the medallion in his hand, Wuqi smiled faintly and said, "This Lao AI fella is quite useful. TSK, Goddess Miao Xian has been entangled with him for the past 2 years. Hee, even her personal medallion was stolen by him. Sometimes, a man's charm is quite useful." After weighing the medallion in his hand, Wuqi strode towards some other storehouses in Miaoying Palace. Apart from this nether ocean dark gold copper mine, the Yakshas subdued by Miaoying Palace had also hunted many ancient giant beasts under the northern abyss, and found many aquatic treasures. These treasures were classified and kept properly by Miaoying Palace, while Wuqi, who was holding Goddess Miao Xian's personal medallion, had looted all the treasures without any trouble. The only pity was that the number of treasures in the storehouse was far beyond Wuqi's expectation. Although the various rare and precious items in the storehouse could turn an ordinary heaven immortal into a wealthy man, they should not be what Miaoying Palace had accumulated over 10,000 years in the northern abyss. Wuqi suddenly recalled some information given to him by Lord Longyang. Perhaps most of the treasures in the storehouse had become King Zhangqiu's military expenditure. After looting everything in the storehouse, Wuqi rushed towards the storehouse where several hundred heaven immortal items were stored, the same place where Miao Feng had brought him the other day. Using the same medallion to open the way, Wuqi entered the storehouse without a hitch. As Miao Feng had taught Wuqi the talisman to restrain the 2 immortal items, the enchanting skull's flag and the myriad spirits' white bone armor, Wuqi did not alert anyone, and smoothly put all the immortal items into the Black Dragon Spirit Ring. There was a total of 437 immortal items of decent quality. After putting the last immortal item into the Black Dragon Spirit Ring, Wuqi had basically looted everything in Miaoying Palace. Apart from the personal belongings of Goddess Miao Xian and the other disciples, Wuqi had taken everything in the storehouse. Contented, Wuqi left the storehouse and locked the door tightly, then strode away from the scene. Patriarch Miaoying had never bothered herself with these trivial matters. Apart from Goddess Miao Xian, no one in Miaoying Palace had the right to enter these storehouses. But now, as Goddess Miao Xian was indulging in Lao AI's gentle tricks, she did not have the time to care about these things. Right after Wuqi left the storehouse with a smile on his face, and before he could leave the line of sight of those long bow people, an executing disciple clad in a green Taoist robe suddenly came out from behind a cluster of flowers. The executing disciple was an acquaintance of Wuqi. He was Lu Buwei's most favored confidant in recent years. Initially, he was also a coolie who was captured and sent to the mine. However, as he was good at handling affairs, had a good tongue, knew how to please people, and had a good way of handling affairs, he had become one of Lu Buwei's most capable subordinates. Wuqi's heart sank when he saw this man. The executing disciple gave the storehouse a surprised look, then bowed to Wuqi with a flattering smile and said, "Supervisor Wu Wang, have you just come out from there? TSK, how could you possibly have Goddess Miao Xian's medallion?" A chill ran down Wuqi's spine. Usually no one would show up near these storehouses. So, why was he bumped into by Lu Buwei's men today? When Wuqi saw the treacherous gleam flickering in the executing disciple's eyes, he knew that if not for the fact that he had intentionally befriended Lu Buwei over the past 1 year, which made the executing disciple suspicious, he would not have waited for him here, but would have gone straight to report to Lu Buwei. Wuqi had not had any contact with Goddess Miao Xian over the past few years, so it was impossible for him to get her medallion and enter these storehouses. Although the fiend cultivators of Miaoying Palace only recognized the medallion and not the person, Lu Buwei would definitely find something fishy about it. Reverend Li Yang had arrived at Anhe City, and the plan he had been planning for a long time was about to be put into action. As long as Wuqi could delay him for a few hours, everything would go according to his plan. Could it be that the few years of painstakingly waiting would be defeated by this man? With his eyes narrowed, Wuqi suddenly thrust his right hand out and cut open the man's chest, using his razor-sharp fingernails to cut open his heart. The Inferno Hell Fiend energy exploded out of his body, rolling out a dark fiend energy, and pulling the man into it. In just a blink of an eye, the man was turned into a dried corpse. With a cold snort, Wuqi shattered the dried corpse, tilted his head up and cursed under his breath. "How dare you? Who are you? How dare you offend me?" With an air of arrogance, Wuqi clasped his hands behind his back and walked out in an unhurried manner. A few longbow men standing at the entrance of the storehouse were staring at Wuqi from afar, their faces filled with gloating smiles. They had no idea what was happening. In the side hall where Lu Buwei lived, a soul jade slip placed by his bed suddenly shattered. Chapter 508. With a sinister smile on his face, Lu Buwei said in a deep voice, "Too bad, I will not allow you to have such a wonderful thing." "That's good," said Lu Buwei in a deep voice. "Fortunately you came in time, or else I would have no one close to me to use." Laughing strangely, Lu Buwei said complacently, "Lao Ai, oh Lao Ai, how could I not know that you have an extraordinary talent with that 9 dragons embracing pillar? I bet you never dreamed that there would be someone like that among my descendants, right?" Lu Buwei casually clapped his hands, and a handsome young man walked out from a side room at the side of Lu Buwei's living hall. He was as beautiful as a virgin, and his body was as fit as a cheetah. His eyes were filled with lust, and he exuded a strong evil aura. Staring at Lu Buwei, the young man bowed and said in a deep voice, "Patriarch, what can I do for you?" "Lu Buwei, how do you know I am the one who killed him? I have to come up with a solution, or else things will change immediately." In fact, Lu Buwei was confident that he could control both Patriarch Miaoying and Goddess Miao Xian. And when that time came, Miaoying Palace would be his. The executing disciples bowed respectfully at Lu Buwei, then spun and vanished into wisps of wind. Lu Buwei looked at the young man's face and said in a deep voice, "My good boy, it's time for you to come in handy. I'm preparing to kill Lao Ai, but it will be up to you to appease Goddess Miao Xian. You've been cultivating the delightful Zen technique for all these years, and I wonder what you've learned?" The young man smiled, nodded, and said, "I don't think I'll lose to Lao Ai." Lu Buwei sprung to his feet in horror, kicking all the beautiful ladies off the bed. Staring at the shattered soul jade slip in horror, Lu Buwei cried out in a panic, "Little Six is dead. Damn it, who did this? Is it Lao Ai? No, he is fooling around with Goddess Miao Xian. Is it Duke of Longyang? No, he is feigning civility with King Zhangqiu. So who is it?" Suddenly, Lu Buwei came to his senses. Standing on the bed, he sprung up to a height of 30 feet and said furiously, "No, this is not right. Little Six is a peak-stage nascent divinity cultivator, and his evil cultivation technique is strange and unpredictable. If we are talking about escaping skills, I am no match for him. How is this possible? How is this possible? That Wu Wang is just a nascent soul realm devil cultivator. How could Little Six be killed by him?" After pondering for a long while, Lu Buwei shouted in a deep voice, "Children, 4 of you will stand guard at the entrance of the mine. If Daoist Wu Wang appears, follow him closely no matter what he does. I don't believe he will dare to kill you in front of so many fiend guards of Miaoying Palace." Then he casually pointed his finger out, unleashing a few streams of ghost aura that knocked out a few beautiful ladies who were lying on the ground. Then with a flip of his palm, a ghost face rushed out from Lu Buwei's face. The hideous ghost face opened its mouth and let out a cry. Soundlessly, the heavenly ghost mirror flew out from its big mouth. The mirror was oval in shape, pitch black in color. Underneath it was a pedestal, formed from 13 ferocious-looking heavenly ghosts, their bodies twisted and contorted in agony, and their bodies shrouded in raging black flames. These heavenly ghosts raised their arms and held up the mirror, which was emanating an immense ghost aura. Deep, muffled ghost howls could be heard coming out from the mirror. After being trained by Lu Buwei, the executing disciples around him had become very capable. In just the time to finish a pot of tea, they had returned and told Lu Buwei all the places that Wuqi had been to today in a low voice. The more Lu Buwei listened, the more delighted he became. He clapped his hands and said with a smile, "Wonderful. He brought Goddess's medallion to those storehouses. TSK, why would he go there for no reason? He must be a thief. Ha! What else could he have done?" Clapping his hands, Lu Buwei laughed and said, "It is Lao Ai's good deed. It was too wonderful for words. But why did Lao Ai steal the medallion for him? Once this matter is exposed, he will die a horrible death under the wrath of a gold immortal. But Lao Ai did it. Why? Hee. Lao Ai is not the kind of man who would sacrifice his life for righteousness. What he values the most is his own life. Why would he risk his life for Wu Wang?" Not only was Lu Buwei equipped with the divine ability of Great Five Ghosts, he also possessed a secret treasure, the Heavenly Ghost Mirror. This ancient precious treasure was an expert in traveling through the void, allowing him to travel through the void as if there was no one there. Using the teleportation formation that connected to Panga continent, his speed was much faster than ordinary people. As a result, it only took him about half a year to arrive at Panga continent. As for that Taoist Wu Wang, I have to rope him in. If possible, I can even promise him a daughter of my clan, and let him marry into my Lu clan. I'll make use of the tens of thousands of cultivators under his command to establish a foothold in Miaoing Palace first, and then I'll figure out how to deal with him later. He is just a nascent soul cultivator, and it will be easy to deal with him." Lu Buwei cast aside Lao Ai and Duke of Longyang, the two troublesome characters, and began to figure out how to get closer to Wu Qi. After taking a turn, Lu Buwei chuckled and said, "Strange, where did he get the medallion from? As a mighty gold immortal, how could Goddess Miao Xian fail to protect her personal belongings? This is great, Lao Ai." However, Lu Buwei's luck was not good enough. Less than a month after he traveled on Pangu continent, he accidentally entered the Northern Ocean and was captured alive by Goddess Miao Xian. Goddess Miao Xian had planned to torture and kill Lu Buwei for fun, but with just a few words, Lu Buwei managed to convince her to take charge of the mineral veins in the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean, and opened up the Nether Ocean dark gold copper deposit. Strange, why did Wu Wang kill Xiaolu for no reason? What is he trying to do? Or what has he done? After beckoning at the youth, Lu Buwei brought him straight to Goddess Miao Xian's bedchamber. "Taoist Wu Wang. Taoist Wu Wang. I can't believe I was fooled by you again. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. I swear I'll wipe out your entire clan. I swear it." The few executing disciples bowed, then hastily transformed into beams of light, and flew towards the side hall where King Zhangqiu was staying. Wu Qi's heart sank. He knew that Lu Buwei, the cunning old fox, had discovered something was not right, and had begun to make his move. For figures transformed into beams of light, and shot out of Miaoing Palace, standing guard at the entrance of the mine like for vigilant hunting hounds. Right at this moment, one of the over 30 soul jade slips placed on the head of Lu Buwei's bed, which were placed by Chi-Chi, suddenly broke into pieces. As an ambitious and ruthless man, how could he be willing to be a subordinate? When the Six Dynasties began to evacuate Myriad Immortals' planet, Lu Buwei had left with the enormous foundation of his clan. As the leader of his clan, after settling down his relatives and clansmen, Lu Buwei had resolutely come to Pangu continent alone, hoping to find some opportunities to stir up trouble and make a meteoric rise in his career. The 4 executing disciples whom Lu Buwei had sent out were loitering tens of miles away, chasing fishes as if they were having fun. 36 fiend guards did not pay any attention to these 4 little fellows, who they could easily kill at any time. However, with the mystic eyes of universe, Wu Qi had seen their every move. With a pinch of his finger, a jade slip appeared in Lu Buwei's palm. He focused his mind and injected a message into it, then gave it to one of the executing disciples standing next to him. "Remember, don't let Duke of Longyang notice anything unusual about you. Just serve him attentively, and try your best to satisfy whatever King Zhangqiu asks for. If Lord Longyang leaves King Zhangqiu for even a moment, give him the jade slip immediately." With a strange smile on his face, Lu Buwei lightly clapped his hands. A few executing disciples whom he had subdued emerged from the surroundings, and quickly came before Lu Buwei. Raising his head, Lu Buwei looked at the ghostly flame burning fiercely on a bone pillar off in the distance and said in a cold voice, Go and find out where the supervisor of the mine, Taoist Wu Wang, has gone today. Split up and be careful, and don't let anyone know about this. The corner of Lu Buwei's eyes twitched as he snapped. Damn it! Taoist Wu Wang, you ungrateful fool. I've spent the last 2 years trying to recruit you, and I've given you dozens of beautiful girls. My sincerity has been fed to a dog. After serving Patriarch Miaoying and Goddess Miao Xian with utmost care, Lu Buwei had also roped in Taoist Wu Wang, the new supervisor of the mine. With that, he would soon be able to take control of over 10,000 cultivators in the mine. Lu Buwei had a good plan. Miaoying Palace should be a good backing for him, and with over 10,000 cultivators as his foundation, he should be able to easily develop a business that was 100 times larger than the Lu clan. Lu Buwei was lying on the bed, enjoying the tenderness of a few beautiful women. He stretched out his hand and caressed the smooth bodies of these beautiful women, narrowing his eyes as he pondered. However, the appearance of Lao Ai and Lord Longyang had made Lu Buwei feel the presence of a crisis. Since he had come to Penghu continent, it was only natural that others would come as well. What annoyed him even more was that Lao Ai had won the favor of Goddess Miao Xian, and Lord Longyang had attached himself to King Zhangqiu. This made Lu Buwei very angry, but at the same time, he had his guard up. Pointing his finger at the heavenly ghost mirror, Lu Buwei recited a few incantations, then snapped in a low voice, "Heavenly ghost true spirit, everything under the heavens is before my eyes." The mirror, measuring 1 foot and 3 inches in diameter, rippled like water, and a sticky black light shone out from the depths of the mirror. Abruptly, the figure of Taoist Wu Wang, which Wu Qi had transformed into, flashed across the surface of the mirror. I need to find a way to get rid of Lao Ai. As for Lord Longyang, it will be best if I can subdue him. Lu Buwei frowned as he carefully weighed the pros and cons. Too bad that Patriarch Miaoying is only interested in those 7 virgin boys. Otherwise, I would not hesitate to sell my body and try my best to deal with that old fiend. TSK Lao Ai, how can you be so shameless? And you, Lord Longyang, you are all jackals of the same tribe. None of you are a good guy. Then Lu Buwei continued to give out orders. Send a few men to serve King Zhangqiu. Send him fine wine, delicacies, beautiful girls, and virgin boys. No matter what he asks, none of you are allowed to leave his side. If Lord Longyang, who serves King Zhangqiu, shows any unusual movements, hand this jade slip to King Zhangqiu immediately. Lu Buwei stroked his beard and pondered for a brief moment. Suddenly he laughed and said, "So Lao Ai is the only one left now? Lao Ai, could it be that you are the one who is in charge of this? Are you here for these treasures of Miaoying Palace? You are not that shallow, are you? What are these treasures to you? If you can make friends with Goddess Miao Xian, that will be your greatest gain." Near the entrance of the mine, Wu Qi was sitting on a rock, glancing at the surroundings through the formation formed by 36 fiend guards. As the ghostly aura rushed out of the side hall, Lu Buwei came to an abrupt halt. His eyes flickered, and a creepy smile suddenly appeared on his face. Lu Buwei clenched his jaws and made up his mind. 5 little ghosts darted out from around him, bringing with them a large sheet of ghostly aura as they sped towards the exit. Chapter 509. At the entrance of the mine, 36 fiend guards were guarding the entrance with all their might. A plume of dark smoke sprayed out from the entrance, amidst which Wu Qi revealed himself with his eyes narrowed, his face as gloomy as still water. 36 fiend guards gave Wu Qi a glance, then closed their eyes indifferently. Miaoying Palace had a strict rule. As Goddess Miao Xian had asked them to guard the entrance of the mine, their mission was to guard the entrance. As for anything else, they could not care less. Hovering in the ocean, Wu Qi suddenly moved. Tens of ferocious fiends shot out from his back, howling shrilly as they sped into the distance. In just a flash, they had crossed tens of miles of distance and attached themselves onto the bodies of 4 executing disciples sent out by Lu Buwei. Explode! Wu Qi clenched his right hand into a fist and cried out lightly. The 4 executing disciples howled miserably as their bodies exploded into clumps of blood and gore, and were devoured by the few fiends that had attached themselves to them in just a few bites. With a cruel and merciless grin on his face, Wuqi gave the 36 fiend guards a glance. They opened their eyes and stared at Wuqi with a hideous smile, their eyes filled with a bloodthirsty impulse. For these fiend guards, when Wuqi killed the executing disciples of Lu Buwei at the entrance of the mine, it was as if they were watching a swarm of tiny insects fighting and killing each other. They were too lazy to consider if there was anything wrong with it, and just watched it with admiration. For these fiend immortals who had been cultivating for countless periods, they no longer had any sense of humanity in them. It was difficult for ordinary people to understand their thoughts. Wuqi had merely killed 4 insignificant executing disciples, and even if Wuqi killed Lu Buwei right in front of them, there was a 90% chance that these fiend guards would just ignore it. After all, both Wuqi and Lu Buwei were merely outer sect disciples, and they were merely the supervisor in charge of some miscellaneous tasks in Miaoying Palace. Their life and death had nothing to do with these fiend guards. Cold sweat suddenly seeped out from his back. Wuqi had only killed the 4 deacon disciples because he had a sliver of hope. What he did not expect was that these fiend guards did not take these 4 executing disciples seriously at all. They did not bring any trouble to Wuqi at all. Lu Buwei, I'm not as good as you at understanding the human heart. But when it comes to thinking about these immortals, you're far inferior to me. Wuqi smiled proudly, cupped his fists at the 36 demon guards and said, Seniors, please excuse me. It's been a long time since I've tasted blood. The 36 demon guards Chi-Chi nodded. They licked their lips as a bloodthirsty smile appeared on their faces. But soon, they shook their heads and looked down at the entrance of the mine with a frown on their faces. Goddess Miao Xian had asked them to guard this mine, and they had been guarding it for the past few years. It was no different from facing the wall and reflecting on their misdeeds, and they were feeling very aggrieved. After cupping his fist and bowing to the fiend guards, Wuqi transformed into a beam of light and sped into Miaoying Palace. With Goddess Miao Xian's medallion, no one dared to stop Wuqi along the way. Soon he arrived at the place where King Zhongqiu was staying in Miaoying Palace. A few executing disciples clad in green Taoist robes were standing guard outside King Zhongqiu's bedchamber, calling servants and serving ladies to bring all kinds of fine wine and delicacies to the bedchamber. The sound of King Zhongqiu and Lord Longyang talking and laughing could be heard coming from inside the bedchamber. Judging from the noise, it seemed they were playing chess, drinking wine, and obviously, Lord Longyang's chess skill was stronger than King Zhongqiu's. King Zhongqiu was about to take back his move with a smile on his face, but Lord Longyang refused to budge. The guards brought here by King Zhongqiu were unmoved when they saw Wuqi. They gave Wuqi a cold glance, then turned their eyes away. The few executing disciples sent by Lu Buwei exchanged a look of horror. One of them began to move, and was about to rush into King Zhongqiu's bedchamber. Wuqi spun his feet, and in just a flash, he had come next to the executing disciple like a ghost. He grabbed the disciple's neck with one hand and clenched his fingers together, twisting the man's neck into the shape of a fried dough twist. Waving Goddess Miao Xian's medallion in his hand, Wuqi said in a deep voice, I've been ordered by Goddess Miao Xian to kill the traitor. Please do not panic. Suddenly, the enchanting skull's flag shot out from the top of Wuqi's head. A few faint ghost howls rang out as a few plumes of dark smoke darted out, enveloping the few executing disciples who were trying to flee in a hurry. Amidst the dark smoke, a few human-shaped souls flew out from the bodies of the executing disciples, and were sucked into the enchanting skull's flag in just a blink of an eye. The dozen or so guards of King Zhongqiu moved slightly. Just as they were about to say something, Wuqi flashed the bone medallion in his hand once again. The guards exchanged a glance, then took a few steps back at the same time. But this time, none of the guards dared to be negligent. All their attention was locked onto Wuqi, and no one knew when a bone talisman appeared in their palms. Judging from the gray gleam and the unique energy ripple emanating from the talisman, it was obvious that it was crafted by the great oracles of the human race, a spirit talisman specifically designed to defend against the soul attacks of immortal cultivators. With a wave of the flag, a few corpses were rolled up by the dark smoke. Then he thrust out a clump of fiend flame and burned them to ashes, along with all their belongings, turning them into wisps of smoke that drifted in the air. Cupping his fist, Wuqi bowed to the dozen or so guards standing before the entrance of the bedchamber and said, "Please excuse us. It's a misfortune for our sect to have spies sneaking into our sect. Please forgive us if we have disturbed you." A colorful halo drifted out from the entrance of the bedchamber. Lord Longyang, with his long hair hanging loosely over his shoulders, clad in a long crimson robe and adorned with jewels, pearls and jades, he walked out slowly. "What has disturbed you so much?" he asked in a soft voice. Wuqi cupped his fist and bowed to Lord Longyang, repeating what he had said just now. Lord Longyang's eyes narrowed as he cried out in a fuss, "I a traitor? You have to be extra careful in this matter. It is not our place to meddle in this matter. Miaoing Palace, you can handle it yourself. Just don't delay the important matter." Wu Qi and Lord Longyang's eyes met for a brief moment, but they immediately looked away. During that brief exchange of glances, Wu Qi sent a clear message to Lord Longyang. "I'm going to do something here. Be careful." Lord Longyang also expressed his thoughts clearly during that brief exchange of glances. "I'll help you here, and you owe me a favor. You'll have to pay me back in the future." After cupping his fist and bowing to Lord Longyang, Wu Qi transformed into a beam of dark light and sped towards Goddess Miao Xian's bedchamber. With the medallion given to him by Goddess Miao Xian, Wu Qi passed through layers upon layers of defensive mechanisms, and no one tried to stop him. When he was about 1 mile away from Goddess Miao Xian's bedchamber, Wu Qi caught up with Lu Buwei and the handsome youth before a flower bed filled with countless exotic flowers and grasses, all of which were blooming with colorful flowers. Standing before Lu Buwei were 8 beautiful female disciples of Miaoing Palace, led by Madman Shui. Their faces were flushed with lust, and their eyes were watery. Their clothes were disheveled, exposing a large portion of their fair skin. Many of the flowers in the flower bed were flattened to the ground, and some women's undergarments, such as undergarments, were still lying on the ground. Obviously, Madman Shui was having a fierce battle with these few female disciples of Miaoing Palace, and they happened to block Lu Buwei's way. Lu Buwei knew Madman Shui, and he knew that he was Lao Ai's disciple. Lu Buwei fixed his gaze at Madman Shui with his eyes burning with rage. Gnashing his teeth in anger, he said, "I have an important matter to discuss with Goddess. Make way for me now." Madman Shui had both of his hands wrapped around the beautiful girl standing next to him, rubbing her body up and down. He said in a strange voice, "Sisters seniors, this old fellow is asking to see Goddess. TSK, Goddess is having a good time now, so why would she be in the mood to meet them? Ha, elder sister, please say a word. Can you let them pass? Who is going to bear the punishment for spoiling Goddess's mood?" Clearly, the 8 female disciples of Miaoing Palace were attracted by Madman Shui, and their hearts were all tied to him. Upon hearing his words, the 8 female disciples began to lash out at Lu Buwei. One after another, they accused Lu Buwei of rudely bringing his men and asking to see Goddess Miao Xian, saying that he had no manners at all. They held a grudge against Lu Buwei for spoiling their good time with Madman Shui, and they were so angry that they said they would complain about Lu Buwei to Goddess Miao Xian. Lu Buwei was both furious and anxious. He pointed his finger at Madman Shui and cried out, "This guy is up to no good and he is harboring." Before Lu Buwei could finish his words, Wu Qi had arrived behind him while he was entangled with Madman Shui and his men. Without using the enchanting skull's flag, Wu Qi came up behind Lu Buwei with big strides, thrusting his fist straight towards Lu Buwei's back. A whistling wind came whistling out from the fist, and the air billowed. When Wu Qi's fist had only traveled 3 inches, it had already shattered the air around Lu Buwei, creating a vacuum zone with a diameter of nearly 10 feet around him. Just by cultivating the foundation chapter of the true body of heaven and earth scripture, in just over 2 years, Wu Qi's fleshly body had attained the overall strength of a mid-tier heaven immortal, who cultivated his fleshly body. Judging from the strength of his fleshly body alone, Wu Qi could at least fight against a 24th-tier heaven immortal. It was one of the few peculiar cultivation techniques used by the human race to secure the fate of their own race, and the true body of heaven and earth scripture was not to be underestimated. It was just a punch, but before the fist could even touch Lu Buwei's body, the skin on Lu Buwei's body had already burst open, with blood spraying out from his 7 apertures. The hidden force of Wu Qi's fist had smashed into Lu Buwei's body, nearly shattering all his internal organs. Suddenly, a sword beam burst out. The young man standing next to Lu Buwei unleashed a sword beam, thrusting towards Wu Qi. Wu Qi strode forward and thrust his chest forward. The sword beam struck right on his chest, but nothing happened to Wu Qi's chest, while the sword beam was shattered into pieces by his strong body. Then he thrust out his elbow and smashed it on the young man's chest. A tremendous force, mixed with a dense purple mist, smashed into the young man's body, turning his soul and fleshly body into nothingness at the same time. Lu Buwei gave a miserable hiss and cried out in alarm. "Little boy, the plan I've been working on for several years has been completely ruined by you." After killing this unknown grandson of Lu Buwei with his elbow, Wu Qi took the opportunity and smashed his fist into the middle of Lu Buwei's back. Shaking his fist, Wu Qi clenched his teeth and smashed his fist into the middle of Lu Buwei's back without holding back. The fist exploded, and half of Lu Buwei's body was shattered into pieces. Wu Qi moved closer to Lu Buwei's ear and said in a low voice, "Lu Buwei, with the means of a mortal state minister, you plotted against an immortal. How can you not lose?" Lu Buwei's eyes flickered. Suddenly, the heavenly ghost mirror flew out from his body, transforming into a blood-red beam that wrapped around his broken body, and disappeared abruptly. Wu Qi was startled. An extraordinary treasure like the heavenly ghost mirror was indeed bizarre, and he didn't even see how it disappeared. There was no trace of Lu Buwei's aura in the surrounding void, and he had no idea where the mirror had sent him to. It was at this moment that the 8 female disciples of Miaoying Palace came to their senses. Right before their eyes, Wu Qi, the chief supervisor of the mine, had just killed Lu Buwei, the chief supervisor of miscellaneous affairs of Miaoying Palace. The 8 girls scolded at the same time, pointing their fingers at Wu Qi and getting ready to launch an attack. "In for a penny, in for a pound." Wu Qi glared and leaped towards the 8 girls with a murderous look in his eyes. Chapter 510. In fact, the 8 female disciples of Miaoying Palace whom Madman Shui had hooked up with were not the real disciples of Miaoying Palace. Most of them were Goddess Miao Xian's serving ladies, and because they were Goddess Miao Xian's personal servants, they were accepted into Miaoying Palace as an exception. Their cultivation base was only at the level of lower-grade Heaven Immortal, and the strongest among them only possessed an overall strength of 35th tier Heaven Immortal. To make matters worse, while Lao Ai was having fun with Goddess Miao Xian, these 8 female disciples of Miaoying Palace were messing around with Madman Shui in the flower bed. As Madman Shui had inherited Lao Ai's legacy, it was natural that he would not be able to defeat Goddess Miao Xian, who was a gold immortal. But he could easily defeat a few lower-tier Heaven Immortals. Just now, the girls had practiced the delightful Zen with Madman Shui, and as a result, their energy essence and immortal energy were almost depleted by Madman Shui. As a result, they were left with only 30% of their overall strength, and the overall strength of a few of them had even dropped to a realm weaker than a Heaven Immortal. Wu Qi had been recuperating in the mine for several years, and now he had launched a sneak attack with the overall strength of a 24th tier Heaven Immortal. The 8 girls did not even have the time to see Wu Qi's movement clearly before Wu Qi's fist pierced through their foreheads and shattered their immortal souls. Wu Qi's attack was too fast, too violent, and came with an overwhelming force. Before their immortal items could react, Wu Qi had crushed their immortal souls together with their immortal souls. An immense killing intent lingered in the air. As Wu Qi's body had gone through an intense exercise, the friction between his skin and the air caused waves of hot air to rise from the surface of his skin. When Madman Shui saw the towering killing intent in Wu Qi's eyes, his knees went weak, and he nearly dropped to his knees before Wu Qi. Grabbing Madman Shui's shoulder, Wu Qi said in a deep voice, "Well done. I was afraid that Lu Buwei had already seen Goddess Miao Xian. Since you've stopped him, I'll remember this favor. Guard here, and don't let anyone in who wants to see Goddess Miao Xian. Can you buy me a few more hours?" Madman Shui's ugly face twisted abruptly, revealing a ferocious smile as he said, "Duke of Tianyan, just do what you need to do. If there are any benefits, don't forget about me." Madman Shui gave a strange laugh as he turned to look at Goddess Miao Xian's bedchamber, which was still faintly in sight. He chuckled and said in a low voice, "As for Master, I don't need to give him anything good. The benefits he has received these past 2 years are enormous." Wuqi grinned, patted Madman Shue's shoulder heavily, then spun and left. While walking, his divine will had already connected with a few celestial fiend puppets near Anhe City. Wuqi agreed with Madman Shue's words. For the past 2 to 3 years, Lao Ai and Goddess Miao Xian had been living in perfect harmony, spending every single day together and meditating on the blissful Zen. How could he be lacking in benefits? Speaking of which, it was strange. Why was it so easy for a man to please a woman? In the parterre, Madman Shui gave the 8 corpses on the ground a glance, then breathed out a long sigh. Clasping his palms before his chest, he began to recite a rebirth scripture under his breath. As Madman Shui recited the scripture, the 8 corpses began to burn and turn into ashes. Amidst the ashes, several hundred thumb-sized strange relics shimmering with a golden gleam were condensed. Madman Shui waved his hand at the relics, causing them to fuse into his body, turning into rolling hot streams that flowed through his entire body. Merciful Buddha. Madman Shui chanted the name of Buddha in a dignified manner. 60% of the energy essence and cultivation base of 8 heaven immortals. Hihi, the magical divine ability taught by Master is indeed the one and only technique that leads straight to the great Tao. Wonderful. What a pity that Duke of Tianyun kills without batting an eyelid. 8 beautiful girls were killed by him just like that. Recalling how Wu Qi killed the young man brought here by Lu Buwei with an elbow strike, then punched Lu Buwei so badly that he had no choice but to flee with the help of the heavenly ghost mirror, and then immediately launched a violent attack, and killed the 8 female immortals with his fist, Madman Shui shuddered, and a chill rose from the soles of his feet to his head. What a strong killing intent this old man has. TSK, Master said he is only a nascent soul cultivator? Have you ever seen a nascent soul cultivator who can kill a heaven immortal with a single punch? After pondering for a long while, Madman Shui spread his arms and said with a bitter smile, "Master is blind. Indulging in lust is harmful to the body." A thread of Wu Qi's divine will had been left beside Madman Shui, and when he saw Madman Shui's behavior, Wu Qi could not help but be shocked by the vicious technique Lao Ai had taught him. But when he heard Madman Shui's last words, Wu Qi nearly burst out laughing. Shaking his head, Wu Qi quickly returned to the mine while controlling the celestial fiend puppets, and Su Qin in Anhe City to speed up the operation. Inside a deep and dark mine, over 10,000 cultivators were working hard to excavate ores, while nearly 1,000 patrolling yakshas were squatting on stalagmites, laughing, gambling, and fighting each other as if they were having fun. When they saw Wu Qi, all the yakshas rose to their feet and bowed respectfully to Wu Qi. Over the last few years, although Wu Qi had spent most of his time in the stone chamber, studying the Tao of Miaoing Palace's fiend formations, he had shown himself once in a while. Wu Qi was a decisive and ruthless killer, and his ruthless and vicious methods had chilled the hearts of the patrolling yakshas. The over 10,000 cultivators in the mine had been subdued by Wu Qi, and all their nascent divinities were under Wu Qi's control. It showed that these patrolling yakshas were really afraid of Wu Qi. Looking at these patrolling yakshas, Wu Qi shook his head. Miaoing Palace controlled their life and death, so it was impossible for them to follow him. It was a pity that although these patrolling yakshas possessed decent innate divine abilities, their intelligence was very low. Once they were subdued, they would be very loyal, and would serve as the best guards. But, as Miaoing Palace had subdued them first, Wu Qi did not have the chance to do anything to them. Wu Qi gave these patrolling yakshas a glance, then shook his head and flew up to a platform on the top of the mine. There was a small teleportation formation here. After those patrolling yakshas captured some unlucky itinerant cultivators, they would use this formation to send them to the mine. As soon as Wu Qi flew up to the platform, a few patrolling yakshas near the formation rose to their feet hastily. Their faces were filled with flattering smiles as they bowed to Wu Qi. After a brief moment of pondering, Wu Qi gave an order to all patrolling yakshas in the mine. "Come up here, I'll give you something good today." Laughing and joking, nearly 1,000 patrolling yakshas flew up to the platform. Over the past few years, They had obtained quite a lot of energy stones from Wuxia. For these extremely poor Yakshas, Wuxia was their parent who provided them with food and clothing. Therefore, when Wuxia summoned them, even those Yakshas who were supervising the work in the mine came out hastily, flying up to the platform obediently. Sighing softly, Wuxia stamped his foot on the ground, shattering the teleportation formation. With a casual wave of his hand, Wuxia grabbed all the energy stones on the formation in his hand. Before these patrolling Yakshas could react, the enchanting skull's flag flew whistling up from the top of Wuqi's head. Countless ghostly skeletons condensed from dark smoke spun wildly in the sky, then threw themselves onto the bodies of these patrolling Yakshas. Shrill and miserable howls kept ringing out. The souls of these patrolling Yakshas were forcibly dragged out from their bodies by the ghostly skeletons, then ripped to shreds in just a blink of an eye. Their fleshly bodies were also devoured by the dark smoke. Before long, nearly 1,000 patrolling Yakshas had disappeared without a trace, becoming the nourishment for the enchanting skull's flag. The cultivators who were working outside were struck dumb. They stared blankly at Wuxia, wondering why he killed all these patrolling Yakshas. Wuxia snorted lightly, then casually cast out a primordial rune and blocked the entrance of the mine, isolating any sound from the mine. With a deep voice he cried out, "Everyone gather here. Don't make any noise. Anyone who dares to make any noise will be killed. Quick, everyone gather here." Upon hearing Wuqi's order, the cultivators seemed to suddenly understand something. Some of them raised their arms with flushed faces and hurried out of the mine, gathering in the largest mine in the middle. Led by several hundred foremen selected by Wuxia, over 15,000 cultivators with the cultivation base of 33rd tier heaven immortals, and the lowest Jindan realm, had assembled in the mine. While these cultivators were hurrying out of the mine, Wuxia was in the middle of the mine, setting up a teleportation formation discs which he had prepared beforehand. All of Wuqi's materials had been used up, and these discs were prepared for him by Lao AI. Lao AI used to have a very strong latent power in Great Yen, so it was easy for him to collect some cultivation materials. For example, the spatial breaching spirit gold, which was the most important material for teleportation formations, was inlaid with 18 of them, each the size of a human head. They were more than enough to minimize the consumption of the teleportation formation. All the cultivators recognized what Wuxia had set up on the ground. They were so excited that they could hardly breathe. Suddenly, they knew what Wuxia was going to do. Wuxia was going to bring them out of this place, away from this hell that had no sunlight and no natural energy. When the teleportation formation was ready, Wuxia flew up into the sky and cried out to the cultivators, "Cut the crap! Form into groups of 100 and leave quickly through the teleportation formation. There will be someone waiting for you on the other side. You just need to follow his orders. Don't forget, your lives are in my hands. Anyone who dares to make any strange moves will be killed." The cultivators bowed their heads. Faced with Wuxia, who had their nascent divinity in his hands, how could they dare to offend him? A misty white light flashed on the teleportation formation, as one group of cultivators after another walked into it, turned into beams of light, and disappeared. Wuxia stood quietly off to the side, watching these cultivators leave. He narrowed his eyes and wore a strange smile on his face. These 10,000 cultivators were a great gift from Miaoying Palace to him, Wuxia. The high-end power among them was equal to a large sect in Piluo Heavenly Realm. They had come at the right time. And He City, Green City, Miaoying Palace, the officials of Dayu. Wuxia smiled faintly as he murmured one name after another under his breath. Of course, the most important thing is the innate yang energy at the bottom of the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean. He took a deep breath and waited until the last cultivator had walked into the teleportation formation. Then Wuxia put away the formation disc and swaggered out of the mine. 36 fiend guards were still sitting cross-legged at the entrance of the mine, paying no attention to anything. None of them knew where their minds were. Wuxia gave them a look, gave them a friendly smile, and then flew straight into Miaoying Palace. Chapter 511. Dozens of female cultivators with excellent physiques, delicate features, and cultivation bases ranging from Jindan realm to nascent Soul realm were crowding around Reverend Li Yang. Reverend Li Yang was laughing joyfully as he sat on the throne in the great hall, his hands caressing and scratching the bodies of these female cultivators. He did not look like a gold immortal who had attained the Tao, but a foppish young master who lived in the mortal world. 1,000 miles away from Cyan Forest Mountain, in a secluded valley, 50 giant flying boats were quietly hovering in midair. The largest flying ship among them was in the shape of a flying dragon, 10 miles long and hundreds of meters wide. On the flying ship was a small-scale city. Countless human warriors in golden armors had been standing on the deck, proudly and proudly. They inhaled and exhaled white mist while releasing a fierce aura of killing, condensing into a white cloud on the flying ship. The Grand Oracle of Zhong Province, Yu Mu, sighed and shook his head. Fortunately, it is good that Hu Bugui and the others managed to find out the background of Green City. If they can kill 7 gold immortals, it will be a great contribution. On top of that, Green City does not have any almighty experts as its backing. How can they say anything after killing 7 gold immortals and taking back Enlu County? It's time to show those immortals who think they are superior to us a little. Daoist Yunzong bowed hastily, then laughed and began to flatter Reverend Li Yang, saying that as long as Reverend Li Yang and the other 6 elders were in Greenwood Mountain, no evil cultivator would dare to come here and court death. Reverend Li Yang enjoyed his flattery very much. Smilingly, he raised up the wine vessel and gulped down the fine wine. Drums and music were playing in Greenwood Mountain, filling the air with melodious immortal music. Fairies clad in fine gauze stood on the back of white cranes, dancing in the clouds along with the white cranes. Only the truly high and mighty immortals would be able to appreciate this kind of fairy dance. How could the mortals in the mortal world have such a blessing? On Feng Lingling's ship, Yan Bugui was kneeling respectfully on the ground in the 9-storied building with flying eaves. Daoist Shui Xian and Shui Yi were following closely behind Daoist Yunzong, never leaving his side. On top of that, Daoist Yunzong was always following Reverend Li Yang and flattering him. As a result, Shui Xian and Shui Yi, the 2 celestial fiend puppets, were less than 3 feet away from him. If these 2 celestial fiend puppets had a strong cultivation base, the distance of 3 feet was more than enough to kill Reverend Li Yang. 8 large chairs carved from stone were placed on both sides of Feng Lingling. At the moment, there were people sitting on each of the chairs, but a few of them were shrouded in a faint mist, making it impossible to see their faces. Feng Lingling gave Hu Bugui a lazy look, then nodded slowly and said, "He deserves the credit for this." However, for this operation, the commanding general was Feng Jupin. The great merit of killing the 7 outer domain golden immortals and recovering Enlu County belongs to Feng Jupin. After a long banquet, Reverend Li Yang, who had also drunk a few jars of fine wine, raised up his wine vessel and said with a loud laugh, "Yunzun has contributed a great merit this time. And He City and the entire Enlu County are now in our hands. 3 days from now, it will be a very auspicious day, when the Green City Manor will officially open its doors and recruit its disciples. This is a very joyous occasion, and we can't afford to be careless in this matter. We must handle it with utmost care, and not make any mistakes." Feng Lingling continued coolly. As for that Zhu Linggong, as a sinful official, he has taken the initiative to cooperate with the secret agents of the punishment court and gather all the information about Enhe City and its surrounding areas. That is his contribution. He can take over the position of the city lord of Enhe City. It is just a small city, and it is not a big deal. Standing right next to Daoist Yunzong was his senior brother, Daoist Yunzong. Daoist Yunzang's face was extremely unsightly, as if all 18 generations of his ancestors had suddenly hanged themselves in front of him. Nevertheless, he still had to force a smile on his face, drinking and chatting with the elders and his master. Daoist Yunzong, who was trying to force a smile, even had the thought of killing his junior brother with his flying sword. Feng Lingling gave him a smile, then gently stroked the coiled serpent on his leg and said coolly, "Hu Bugui? Mulan, a talented man like him must be put in an important position. When Enlu County is reclaimed, you can give him the position of punishment court." Yan Bugui knelt respectfully on the ground, not daring to make even the slightest movement. Only the two celestial fiend puppets, who had transformed into Lao Ai and Daoist greed, were standing in a corner of the hall. They saw Reverend Li Yang's eyes, which were as clear as water and as cold as ice. This Reverend Li Yang was not as weak as he looked. His state of mind had always been clear, and there were a few faint auras lingering around his body. Obviously, he was ready to take out his immortal item at any time. All of a sudden, Feng Lingling asked, "Are the people in Green Forest Mountain ready?" Reverend Li Yang and the other 6 gold immortals of Green City had their interest piqued. "Oh, that will be great. Just ask them to come up and have a look." Feng Lingling smiled, and Feng Mulan Yuzong and the others laughed joyfully. As time went by, the atmosphere in the tower was gradually filled with a gloomy killing intent. Feng Lingling sighed faintly, then nodded and said, "Feng Jupen only needs the credit of reclaiming in He City. This time, he should be promoted to a higher rank of nobility." He frowned and said, "It is getting more and more difficult to contribute to a meritorious deed now. Don't tell me we're going to be suppressed by those things." Lao Ai hastily clapped his hands. Several dozens of cultivators from Euphoria Heavenly Palace walked slowly into the hall with their heads held high, leading 3 teams of several hundred young boys and girls. Lao Ai smiled and said, "Among them, there are a few who possess a single spirit root and a perfect innate Tao body." He was impressed by Su Qin's shrewd calculation, as in less than 2 years, Su Qin was able to come up with today's plan. The prefecture overseer of Zhong Province, Feng Lingling, had led the elites of Zhong Province to sneak into this place, all for the sake of getting a meritorious deed for his precious son, Feng Jupen, to be promoted to a higher rank of nobility. On the left side of this flying ship were tens of other extremely large flying ships, but they were only slightly smaller than this one. Flags were fluttering on these ships as well, marked with the following: Diyuzhong Province's Grand Oracle Yu Mu, Diyuzhong Province's Grand Priest of Punishment Feng Mulan, Diyuzhong Province's Grand Priest of Military Feng Yeshi, and so on. On one of the flags, the words Diyuzhong Province's Left Minister Yu Mu could be seen clearly. "Everything is ready," Yin Bugui reported hastily. "Zhu Lingong's son has been taken as a disciple by the master of Euphoria Heavenly Palace in Anhui City. Because of that, Zhu Lingong has been given the position of chief supervisor in Euphoria Heavenly Palace. All of them have been sent to Greenwood Mountain by Zhu Lingong. I'm afraid they are about to make their move." Su Qin's plan to kill someone with a borrowed knife was not that simple. But how did he include Feng Lingling and the others? No immortal with an accomplished cultivation base, especially a gold immortal who had gone through many trials and tribulations, would allow a stranger to get so close to them. But the bizarre and magical ability of the celestial fiend puppets had allowed Wuxia to achieve this unbelievable feat. 3 feet. The celestial fiend puppets were only 3 feet away from Reverend Li Yang. He cleared his throat and said with a solemn expression, "Especially that Patriarch Xian Yi from the Dark Palace in Huiming Heavenly Realm. We have seized his foundation this time, so we must be careful not to let this old fiend fly into a rage out of humiliation, and gather a group of evil fiends to stir up trouble in Green City." Feng Mulan nodded with a smile on his face, then gave Yen Bugui a praising look. Right in front of Yen Bugui was a large chair carved from a huge black rock, on which sat the skinny Feng Lingling, slowly stroking a strange-looking serpent with 4 sharp horns coiled around his thighs. The serpent's cold and merciless eyes were fixed on Yen Bugui, its long, thin pitch-black tongue sticking out of its mouth, about 1 foot long. On Feng Lingling's left, sitting on the chair nearest to him, Feng Mulan, the Grand Judge of Zhong Province's Punishment Court, said in a deep voice, "This is Hu Bugui. He is the one who sneaked into Anhui City over the last 2 years, and has found out the background of all the immortal powers around the city." Smiling bitterly, Daoist Yunzong picked up a wine cup and emptied it in 1 gulp, then wiped the wine off the corner of his mouth with his sleeve. Lao Ai took a few steps forward, cupped his fist and bowed respectfully to Reverend Li Yang. "Senior Immortal, over the last few years I've carefully selected several thousand young boys and girls with excellent spirit roots in Anhui County, and they are now being raised in Greenwood Mountain. During the opening ceremony, these boys and girls will join Green City and become its disciples. May I ask if Senior Immortal would like to meet them in advance? This was a man as cunning as a fox. While gesticulating, Taoist Yunzong raised the wine cup made from rhinoceros horn and offered a toast to Reverend Liang. His master was here, and so were the 6 elders of his sect. He had taken Anhe City under his control. Such a credit was more than enough for Taoist Yunzong to become the core disciple of Green City and obtain the true mystic technique of Green City. Inside the Great Hall, over 100 immortals from Green City were laughing joyfully. Some were drinking wantonly, while some were narrowing their eyes, admiring the fairies flying in the sky. The Great Hall was filled with billowing smoke and auspicious clouds. It was truly a realm of immortals, where all kinds of strange phenomena were beyond the imagination of mortals. Yen Bugue bowed respectfully and said obediently, "It is all thanks to Marquis Yen that we were able to find out the background of Anhe City and cooperate with the army of Zhong Province to take back Enlu County. I only played a small part in following Marquis Yen, so how dare I claim the credit?" Initially he was able to surpass Taoist Yunzong. But now Taoist Yunzong had made such a great contribution, allowing Green City to gain such a huge foundation on Pangu continent. The credit was more than enough for Taoist Yunzong to surpass all his fellow disciples and become the true core disciple of his master. Feng Lingling nodded satisfyingly. He tilted his head up slightly, closed his eyes and said, "Then get ready everyone. Once the other side makes their move, we will immediately join forces and launch a surprise attack. No one from Green City will be allowed to escape." In the past, when those small immortal cultivators occupied Anhe City, I was too lazy to deal with those ants. But if they had the backing of some almighty experts, I would not want to deal with them. Green City? I can't believe that a small sect whose ancestral master is only a gold immortal dares to establish their base on Pangu continent. Aren't they courting death? On top of a 9-storied building in the middle of the flying ships, a large flag was hoisted high up on a flagpole. A row of golden characters was neatly embroidered on the flag, which had the word U on the background and a pattern of the word U. "Do you Marquis of Zhong Province, Feng Lingling?" Yes, he was too lazy to deal with those who were too weak, and dared not to deal with those who were too strong. As the group of gold immortals from Green City was neither too strong nor too weak, they could be used as Feng Jupin's military credit. Of course, Feng Jupin would get the lion's share of the credit for killing 7 gold immortals and over 100 heaven immortals at once, but the few close descendants of the many powerful figures of Zhong Province would also get a share of the credit. Judging from the flags, it could be seen that all the leaders of the Directorate of Celestials, Punishment Court, Military Court, and the left and right adjutants of Du, Feng Lingling had gathered here. The total number of human soldiers on these 50 flying ships was at least 200,000. Chapter 512. In the Great Hall of Greenwood Mountain, Reverend Liang looked down at the hundreds of boys and girls who had been brought into the hall. Each of the boys and girls were carefully selected to be talented cultivators with excellent aptitudes. Among them, there were 4 boys and 5 girls who had immortal bones. Although they had yet to begin their cultivation, their meridians and bones were actually very similar to those of heaven immortals who had made some achievements in their cultivation base. If they were in outer heavenly realms, they would be supreme grade talents that all the immortal sects would fight for. Only on Pangu continent, the birthplace of human beings, could such immortal bones and Tao bodies be born, nourished by some mysterious energy unique to Pangu continent. Reverend Liang smiled satisfyingly, nodding his head and saying, "Wonderful, too wonderful for words." With a gentle wave of his finger, the 5 girls with immortal bones and Tao bodies floated up gracefully and landed before Taoist Liang. Taoist Liang studied the 5 girls from head to toe. The oldest was 15 or 16 years old, while the youngest was only 7 or 8 years old. Unable to hide the joy in his heart, he burst into laughter and said, "Wonderful! You are indeed my excellent disciples. Are you willing to acknowledge me as your master?" The other few gold immortal elders of Green City frowned unpleasantly. Who would not like such a beautiful girl? Especially these 5 little girls with immortal bones and bodies of Tao. Each of them was beautiful, and it was not hard to imagine how beautiful they would be after they became heaven immortals and transcended the heavenly tribulations. If he could take them as his disciples, make them his personal slaves, and make them his cultivation vessels, wouldn't that be a great pleasure? The most senior gold immortal elder cleared his throat and said in a deep voice, Li Yang, there are 9 girls with immortal bones and Tao bodies here. Why don't we divide them equally? I think this little girl and I hit it off very well. It will be the best if she acknowledges me as her master. The old Taoist pointed his finger at the tallest girl among the 5 girls, who had a pair of delicate eyebrows and looked very handsome. Reverend Li Yang's face flickered. He frowned and gave the 6 gold immortal elders a look, then sighed softly. He intended to monopolize the 5 virgin girls, but it seemed that this was impossible. Reverend Li Yang considered himself a playboy, and his favorite hobby was to linger among female immortals. But among all the female immortals he had met in the past, apart from Lady Dark Goldwater, who was born with an immortal bone and body of Tao, he had never seen such a beautiful virgin girl. Reverend Li Yang breathed out a long sigh, then brought both girls into his arms. He shook his head and sighed. Forget it, so be it. After all, this property was occupied by Yunzun, and this green city manor of Greenwood Mountain was built by my disciple through untold hardships. Taoist Li Yang made it look like he was going to take 2 of the girls for himself. The other 6 golden immortal elders had no choice but to communicate with each other through their divine will. After a series of exchanges, the most senior golden immortal elder took 1 girl and 1 boy as his disciples, while the other 5 golden immortal elders took the rest of the boys with immortal bones and Tao bodies. Fearing that these precious talents with immortal bones and Tao bodies would be hurt, Reverend Li Yang and the other gold immortals of Green City had ordered the boys and girls to serve them. Reverend Li Yang did not care about what others thought of him. With a strange smile on his face, he forced 2 girls to sit on his lap, then picked up a cup of wine and fed it to the 2 new disciples. The 9 boys and girls with immortal bone and body of Tao were very obedient. They obediently listened to the few gold immortal elders, and greeted Reverend Li Yang and the others with soft words, which made them very happy. Under the guidance of Lao Ai, the cultivators of Euphoria Heavenly Palace brought all kinds of rare spirit fruits and spirit herbs to them. The boys and girls eagerly took the spirit fruits and spirit herbs, then fed them into the mouths of the gold immortal elders. As experienced gold immortals, Reverend Li Yang and the others would carefully examine the appearance and aura of each spirit fruit before they ate it. But the fruits prepared by Lao Ai were fruits of some spirit herbs that contained great power and could greatly replenish one's energy. All the fruits would only be beneficial to immortal cultivators and would not bring any harm to them. The 7 gold immortals, who were in a good mood, were even more delighted. They gulped down the wine and ate the spirit fruits, and gradually, a playful look could be seen on their faces. With a strange smile on his face, Reverend Li Yang picked up a wine cup and was about to pour wine to the girls in his arms, whose faces were flushed from drinking too much. Suddenly, the 2 girls fished out 2 bone talismans from under their sleeves, each about the size of a palm and made of some unknown black bone. Reverend Li Yang was taken aback. He unleashed his divine will, and was about to figure out the origin of the bone talismans. Suddenly, a blinding light burst out from both bone talismans at the same time, and 2 beast souls rushed out of the light. Accompanied by a deafening roar, the beast souls pierced through Reverend Li Yang's chest and the throne behind him, knocking him backward and sending him flying far into the distance, leaving a trail of golden blood behind him. Reverend Li Yang's gold immortal item had been activated by itself when the bone talismans burst out with the blinding light, unleashing 3 layers of red, white, and blue light to protect his body. But the beast souls unleashed by the 2 bone talismans came with a tremendous suppressive force, which rendered the item spirits in the gold immortal item unable to move. The gold immortal item did not play any defensive role, and his immortal body was pierced by the beast souls. Reverend Li Yang howled miserably as he was knocked flying hundreds of feet away. Suddenly, he hovered in midair and steadied himself. There was a hole the size of a wash basin in his chest, but countless rays of golden light were flowing rapidly in it, while countless granulation tissues were growing out of it. The granulation tissues were intertwining with each other, and it looked like they were about to mend his body. But all of a sudden, all the flesh sprouts withered at the same time. The pale golden flesh sprouts turned pitch black, then fell off his body and fell to the ground like dead tree roots. Reverend Li Yang stared blankly at the flesh sprouts falling off his body, then cried out in horror as if he had just seen a ghost. How could this be? How could it be? Poisoned? Poisoned? How? At the same time when Reverend Li Yang was severely wounded, the other 6 gold immortals of Green City were also wounded by the boys and girls who served them. Among the 6 gold immortals, the one with the lightest injury had lost his left arm, and the one with the heaviest injury had half of his head turned into nothingness by the beast's souls that rushed out of the bone talismans. Of the 7 gold immortals, only 3 were able to fight back in time. But as soon as their gold immortal items were unleashed, a blinding light burst out from the boys and girls. Sets of strange armors, constructed with countless thumb-sized bone chips, wrapped around the boys and girls, completely shielding them. When the gold immortal items slammed onto the bone chips, several tens of thousands of bone chips burst into a blinding light at the same time, while countless runes burst out from them. The gold immortal items produced ear-splitting whistling noises as numerous bone chips were shattered. But the few boys and girls who were attacked still managed to escape safely, leaping out of the grand hall with just a few leaps. Taoist Yunzong was struck dumb with fear. "What is going on?" he roared hoarsely. "Master, what is going on?" Taoist Yunzong was wild with joy. Pointing a finger at Taoist Yunzong, he bellowed, "Junior brother, how dare you plot to betray the sect? You deserve to die." "No, I didn't. Master, I didn't do that." Taoist Yunzong bellowed furiously. Before his words could fade away, Shui Xian, who had been standing next to Taoist Yunzong, let out a long cry. He curled up his body and slammed towards Taoist Yunzong, unleashing a beam of fiend flame that blotted out his face. "Yunzong, cut the crap. Both of us have found you an eyesore since a long time ago. You deserve to die here today." Taoist Yunzang's body swayed as he stared at Shui Xian in horror. How could his disciple, his most beloved disciple, use the fiend flame, which was the specialty of cultivators from the Fiend League? Yunzong laughed wildly. With a sway of his body, a watercolored vase shot out from the top of his head, sending out a stream of water that rushed down and blocked the fiend flame unleashed by Shui Xian. Taoist Yunzong cried out joyfully, "Master, the evidence is conclusive. It is Junior Brother who seduced fiend immortals and plotted against you." Reverend Li Yang's expression flickered in an instant. A bizarre poison was surging in his body. Not only was it corroding his fleshly body, it was also suppressing his immortal soul, causing his overall strength to drop by 30%. For a gold immortal, the drop of 30% of his cultivation base was more than enough to kill him. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Before Reverend Li Yang could figure out the cause and effect of the incident, and before he could come up with a countermeasure, Shui Xian, who had retreated together with him when he was knocked flying away, rolled his eyes and threw out 7 bone talismans and 7 heavy, pitch-black thunders the size of a fist. Just like the bone talismans unleashed by the few boys and girls, the beast souls that darted out amidst the blinding light shattered the limbs of Reverend Li Yang and the other gold immortals of Green City, and nearly destroyed the immortal bodies of 2 gold immortals. Meanwhile, the 7 thunders exploded near them. The power of the explosion was not strong, as it only produced a clump of pitch-black cloud that wheeled around the 7 gold immortals. Deep, muffled thunderclaps kept ringing out of it. No one in the Great Hall could feel the power of the thunders, but Reverend Li Yang shrieked as if he had just seen a ghost. "Immortal Destruction Talisman and Immortal Execution Thunder. Bastard. These are the vicious tricks secretly concocted by the Directorate of Celestials of the human race." Shrill cries rang out incessantly. When Reverend Li Yang and the other gold immortals rushed out of the dark cloud, they were badly mutilated. The 7 dignified immortals were now as ferocious as evil ghosts. Taoist Yunzong howled at the top of his voice, "Master, I really have no idea what is going on." Reverend Li Yang gave Taoist Yunzong a furious glare, and with that his immortal body suddenly disintegrated, turning into a great amount of sand that sprinkled to the ground. Reverend Li Yang crooked his finger, and Taoist Yunzang's immortal soul flew up into his hand, then was shoved into his sleeve. Exasperated, Reverend Liang bellowed, "Yunzong, quickly lead the..." But before he could finish his words, the sound of drums and horns was heard coming from a distance, as 50 giant flying ships had arrived above Greenwood Mountain with a monstrous killing intent. Several thousand oracles from the Directorate of Celestials sat cross-legged on the ships, each with a large bone talisman hovering above their heads. Then they pressed their palms before their dantian and performed an incantation gesture. Amidst the muffled chanting of an incantation, a restrictive barrier that measured 100 miles in circumference enveloped the entire Greenwood Mountain. Reverend Liang roared furiously. With a backhand gesture, he pointed a finger at Shui, who stood right next to him. But both Shui and Shui Xian were long gone. Reverend Liang did not even know how they escaped. Suddenly, Feng Lingling's feminine voice rang out in the sky. 7 gold immortals and 107 heaven immortals of Green City. Kill yourselves now, and I'll spare one of your broken souls for reincarnation. Among the 107 heaven immortals, there are 32 female immortals. You can live. I love to pity you the most. Many figures rushed down from the flying ships, including Feng Lingling and many other powerhouses of Zhong Province. Chapter 513. An exclamation rang out from a forest about 4,000 to 5,000 miles away from Greenwood Mountain. Patriarch Muji, together with nearly 100 fiend immortals who looked like ferocious fiends, gasped at the same time. They stared in shock at the tens of old fiends who held the highest position in the group. The void around them was twisting vaguely, and they were surrounded by countless fiends. Patriarch Xian Yi from the Dark Palace in Huiming Heavenly Realm had invited a dozen of his best friends, among whom was a high-tier gold immortal who was strong enough to fight against the founding ancestral master of Green City. Initially, they were planning to kill all the immortals of Green City during the opening ceremony of Green City Manor and seize back the foundation of Anhe City. But when they saw Feng Lingling coming with so many officials of Zhong Province, all the old fiends felt a chill run down their spines. Fortunately, fiend immortals had always been secretive in their actions. Otherwise, if Feng Lingling and the others knew that they were here, would another army of the human race come to this place? It was possible for them to secretly invade Diyu's territory and seize a base. But perhaps the Celestial Court had the strength to clash head-on with the officials of Diyu, and the almighty experts such as the Green Emperor of the East, the Black Emperor of the North, and the White Emperor of the West might have the courage to do so. But apart from them, who else would have the courage to fight head-on with the officials of Diyu? The few old fiends exchanged a glance, then shook their heads at the same time. We can't do that. The officials of Zhong Province have made up their mind to conquer Anhe City. We can't get involved in this mess. Pangu Continent is a vast and boundless land. Where can we not find 1 or 2 bases? Let's go, we can't stay here any longer. A beam of dark light flashed across the place, and all the fiend immortals vanished without a trace. A few of them even threw their heads back and laughed gloatingly before they left. The immortals of Green City were about to suffer, and these fiend immortals were more than happy to watch the drama unfold. The roof of the Grand Hall on Greenwood Mountain was lifted off, and the immortals of Green City gathered closely around the 7 gold immortals, including Reverend Liang. 13 dazzling immortal talismans transformed into a large sheet of golden light that shielded everyone above their heads. These were talismans personally made by Patriarch Qing Cheng. Using talismans as a formation, the power of the formation could extract the spiritual qi of heaven and earth to replenish the consumption of spiritual qi. It was a good treasure that could be used to defend oneself and save one's life in case of danger. On the 10 flying ships, nearly 10,000 soldiers raised their bows and released the first wave of arrows. The arrows made from the bones of an unknown animal transformed into tens of thousands of shooting stars, plunging down from the sky and accurately hitting the talisman formation transformed from the immortal talisman. Waves of beastly wails resounded one after another. The arrows collided with the golden light of the array and turned into a large cloud of black smoke, which spread out in all directions. Within the black smoke, there were countless ferocious beast souls faintly visible. A strange cold air spread out, and a devouring and corrosive power was hidden in the black smoke, constantly attacking the golden light of the array. The 13 immortal talismans were made by a high-tier gold immortal, and their power was vast and surging like the Yangtze River. The tens of thousands of arrows were made by the oracles of Diyu's Directorate of Celestials, with a mystic technique of beast souls. Each arrow was as big as a boulder, and when they were thrown into the Yangtze River, they occupied a large part of the river and slowed down the flow of the river. When the arrows hit the golden light of the array, the light gradually dimmed, and some of the runes written with golden lacquer on the immortal talismans became dark and indistinct, as if they had rusted. Reverend Li Yang's face fell. He raised his head to look at Feng Lingling and his company, who were hovering above his head, and cried out sternly, "Prefecture Overseer of Zhong Province, why are you attacking my Green City manor?" The great serpent that Feng Lingling loved so dearly was coiled around his waist, its head resting on his shoulder, and its forked tongue licking his cheek from time to time. Upon hearing Reverend Li Yang's question, Feng Lingling said coolly, "My son, Feng Jupin, needs to be promoted to nobility with military exploits. Those itinerant cultivators who have not even reached the realm of nascent divinity will not be considered a meritorious deed, no matter how many I kill. As for the immortal markets built by powerful immortal sects backed by primordial immortals, I have no interest in them. The few gold immortals from Green City will be a great credit to me." Feng Lingling's words were very frank. 3 years ago, the punishment court of Zhong Province had sent out a large number of spies to infiltrate different places to investigate the situation. Most of the places are occupied by itinerant cultivators, and the strongest among them is merely a heaven immortal. Only Greenwood Mountain and Inhe City will have a few gold immortals to hold the opening ceremony. If I don't seize this opportunity, Feng Jupin will miss the opportunity to be promoted to nobility. Reverend Li Yang was trembling with rage. How could Feng Lingling use a mighty gold immortal from Green City as a stepping stone for his son to be promoted to nobility? Pointing a finger at Feng Lingling, Reverend Li Yang bellowed, "Aren't you afraid of Green City's revenge?" Feng Lingling frowned and said straightforwardly, "According to the information provided by the Protector of Earth from Feng Clan in Outer Heavenly Realms, the founding ancestral master of Green City is just a gold immortal. Without the support of a primordial immortal, why should I be afraid of you? You. Reverend Li Yang was so angry that he nearly coughed blood. His body trembled as he stared at Feng Lingling, clenching his jaws so tightly that he wished he could tear a few pieces of flesh from Feng Lingling's body. Reverend Li Yang glanced around again. Suddenly he flicked his sleeve and pulled out Taoist Yunzang's soul. Pointing a finger at him, he snapped, "Rascal, this is all your fault." Reverend Li Yang suddenly realized that what happened today should have nothing to do with Taoist Yunzang. How could an immortal cultivator collude with an important minister of the human race? Perhaps it was Taoist Yunzang's carelessness in controlling his subordinates, and that had led to today's disaster. Perhaps Green City Manor had long been infiltrated by someone. Taoist Yunzang's immortal soul dropped to his knees and cried out hoarsely, "Master, I deserve to die 1,000 deaths for my sins. It's better for you to leave this place as soon as possible." Pointing his finger at the inner hall behind the Great Hall, Taoist Yunzang cried out, "There is a teleportation formation behind that, which leads straight to a secret cave 300 million miles away. This is the teleportation formation I personally constructed, just in case of emergency. Master and elders, leave this place at once. Even if I have to risk my soul, I'll fight desperately to buy time for Master and elders to escape." Reverend Li Yang glanced at the messy hall, where the carefully selected boys and girls were running and screaming, and some of the more timid ones had even fainted. Reverend Li Yang frowned as he fixed his gaze at Taoist Yunzang, and said with a cold grin, "Fine, you will guard this place until you die. If something bad happens to you, I'll take good care of your family." Reverend Li Yang's meaning was clear. If Taoist Yunzang died here to cover for him, he would take good care of his family in Green City. If Taoist Yunzang fled in fear of death, he could not blame Reverend Li Yang for killing his family. Taoist Yunzang clenched his jaws and gave Reverend Li Yang a heavy kowtow. Then his expression changed abruptly, as a thick blood-red mist rolled out from under his feet, and quickly enveloped his entire body. Taoist Yunzang was trembling violently, and in just a blink of an eye, he had transformed into a ferocious fiend, standing 60 feet tall, his body covered in thick scales, and his head bristling with sharp horns. Reverend Li Yang nodded satisfyingly, then sighed and said, "Broken stars and broken moon art. Well, I'll take good care of your family." With a flick of his sleeve, Reverend Li Yang rolled up all the boys and girls in the Great Hall, then brought all the immortals of Green City, and quickly disappeared into the inner hall. The broken stars and broken moon art was a vicious curse secretly taught to him by the ancestral master of Green City. It would only be triggered when there was no other choice. With Taoist Yunzang's cultivation base as a lower-grade heaven immortal, he could borrow the power of the fiend kings of extraterritorial domains to draw out all the bad karma he had accumulated over thousands of reincarnations. At the cost of his endless life, he could burn the bad karma, elevating his overall strength to the same level as a lower-grade gold immortal in half an hour. After about 8 minutes with the overall strength of a gold immortal, Taoist Yunzang's soul would perish, leaving no trace of his existence behind. The destructive energy produced during this process would become the best tonic for the fiend kings of extraterritorial domains. With the temporary power of a gold immortal, Taoist Yunzang, who had transformed into the shape of a fiend god, bellowed furiously, "Who is the one who schemed against me?" With a towering rage, Taoist Yunzang grabbed at the immortal talismans hovering in midair. All 13 immortal talismans transformed into golden beams and plunged into his palms at the same time. At the moment, Taoist Yunzang was burning the bad karma he had accumulated over thousands of reincarnations, giving him an almost endless immortal energy and an unimaginable overall strength. He forcibly crushed the 13 immortal talismans into a ball, transforming them into a golden sword that looked almost corporeal. Then he swung it backhandedly toward Feng Lingling, who was hovering in midair. Feng Lingling snorted coldly and flicked his finger disdainfully. Clang! The golden sword shattered into pieces. Feng Lingling's face turned pale, and his body shuddered violently as he was thrown several hundred miles up into the sky. His skin was torn inch by inch, from the tip of his right hand all the way to his elbow, exposing the bloody muscles underneath. Feng Lingling bellowed furiously, "A cornered dog will jump over a wall in desperation. Everyone, follow me and kill this fiend together." Yu Mu, the Grand Oracle of Zhong Province, smiled faintly as he fished out 3 pieces of broken bones from under his sleeve, and threw them out with a flick of his wrist. The bones flew out and transformed into 3 balls of green thunder flame the size of a water tank. Then they smashed down and hit the top of Taoist Yunzang's head. 3 loud booms rang out, and all the palaces and pavilions in Greenwood Valley vanished amidst the green thunderbolts, while a large stretch of mountains and rivers were reduced to powder. Taoist Yunzang vanished amidst the thunderbolts, leaving behind only a teleportation formation hovering in midair, flickering with a cold gleam in the once bustling Greenwood Mountain. Vaguely, Reverend Li Yang and the others could be seen blinking and vanishing into the formation. Grinning coldly, Yumu quickly threw out 360 bones, which spun and plunged into the teleportation formation. After that, he recited a few incantations under his breath and cried out in a deep voice, "Stars shift, deities and ghosts freeze. Quick, I can only lock down this teleportation formation for 3 seconds." As his voice echoed out, Feng Lingling took the lead, followed by the Grand Oracle of Zhong Province, the Punishment Minister, the Military Minister and the other important ministers, as well as several thousand military officers of the human race, who all transformed into beams of cold light and rushed into the teleportation formation. A strong light flickered above the teleportation formation, shattering all 360 bones, and turning the entire formation into nothingness amidst the blinding light. Chapter 514. The Immortal Breaking Talisman was a vicious talisman concocted by the Directorate of Celestials of the human race to deal with experts of Gold Immortal realm. Even a Gold Immortal would be severely wounded if he was hit by it, let alone a mere Heaven Immortal who was sneakily attacked from behind. The Heaven Immortal was killed by the talisman, disintegrating into countless golden specks that drifted in all directions. As for Goddess Miao Xin, She had been indulging in Lao Ai's tenderness and strong desire for the past 2 years, and was now engaged in a fierce battle with Lao Ai. How could she have the mood to deal with the affairs of Miaoying Palace? She would never come to this grand hall, which was usually used to welcome Miaoying Palace's exits. Soundless thunderbolts blanketed the grand hall. Those virgin boys and girls who did not possess any cultivation base, and were not even given the chance to let out a miserable howl, were all ripped to shreds by the thunderbolts, and even their souls were turned into nothingness. Because of the brutal attack of the 3 gold immortals, only about 30 human warriors clad in white bone armors and wielding bone talismans were left unscathed in the hall. The right general of the military court of Diyu, the general of Diyu's Pishio General Feng Qinglu, is here. Feng Qinglu gave a loud cry. The beast soul of Gale behind her back moved abruptly, and in just a blink of an eye, she had come before Reverend Li Yang. The strange-shaped spear pierced through 2 layers of the tricolored defensive light around Reverend Li Yang. At the same time, a strange-shaped spear appeared in her hand. The 18-feet-long spear was green in color, and its shaft was densely covered with feathers that looked like they were pieced together by countless feathers. When the spear thrust forward, all the feathers were spinning and dancing, producing countless tiny green whirlwinds that whistled through the air as they pierced straight toward Reverend Li Yang's forehead. One of the virgin boys who was thrown out just now suddenly let out a shrill scream. He pulled out an immortal-breaking talisman from under his sleeve and threw it toward the heaven immortal. A beast soul shaped like a great serpent dashed out of the immortal-breaking talisman while letting out a shrill cry, transforming into a beam of dark light that pierced through the heaven immortal's chest from behind. The vast power of the beast's soul shattered half of the heaven immortal's body, while a wisp of his immortal soul transformed into a wisp of smoke and drifted away. Patriarch Miaoying was in the middle of crafting the fiend treasure in the bottomless abyss. She could not move for several dozens of days, and she did not even have the ability to scan the surroundings with her divine will. He glared at Reverend Li Yang, and a vast amount of water and flame burst out of his eyes. They merged into one and transformed into a blue flying knife in just a blink of an eye, thrusting toward the teleportation formation. It was the trinascent divine blade, which Reverend Li Yang had cultivated painstakingly for countless periods. He had condensed the laws of water and fire, twisted the laws, and transformed the power of water and fire into the energy of gold element. As the saber slashed down, the sharpness of Gungjin, the gentleness of Gue water, and the berserk power of Gungjin merged into one, giving birth to an unprecedented power that could destroy everything. Bastard! Feng Qinglu, who was desperately dodging Reverend Li Yang's attack, flew into a great rage upon witnessing the ruthless attack of Green City's gold immortal. Suddenly, her body disintegrated, transforming into a strong green wind that swept out in all directions. 3 beams of blue light pierced through the disintegrating wind, while the great seal pressed down on the wind that was spreading in all directions. Reverend Li Yang cried out with fear. He did not have the time to unleash another trinascent divine blade to destroy the teleportation formation. Instead, he opened his mouth and spat out 3 trinascent divine blades at the same time, turning them into beams of blue light that pierced straight toward Feng Qingliu's face, chest, and lower abdomen. At the same time, a green seal shaped like a small mountain shot out from Reverend Li Yang's sleeve. In just a blink of an eye, it had transformed into a small mountain that measured several tens of feet in circumference and smashed down toward Feng Qinglu. A Green City Heaven Immortal obeyed the order and thrust his sword toward the teleportation formation. It was an easy task to destroy a teleportation formation with the overall strength of a Heaven Immortal. When Reverend Li Yang brought all the immortals of Green City and rushed toward the teleportation formation in the inner hall, a strange smile appeared on Wuqi's face as he nodded slowly and said, "It has begun. May the heaven bless me and allow me to obtain that thread of innate young energy." Right at this moment, 360 white bones appeared out of thin air above the teleportation formation. Accompanied by the chanting of an incantation, a large sheet of white light burst out of the bones, which condensed into thousands of strange runes and sealed off the void around the teleportation formation. Reverend Li Yang was taken aback. The art of sealing off the void. Damn you, great oracle of the Directorate of Celestials. Feng Qinglu snorted coldly. With a sway of her body, She sprung into the distance like a ghost. Reverend Liang snorted coldly. Just as he was about to say something, the 3 gold immortals smashed the white bones above the teleportation formation. But before they could do anything to destroy the formation, one figure after another flashed out of it. Feng Lingling and all the important ministers of Zhong province rushed out of the formation. The faces of everyone in the Great Hall fell instantly. 3 gold immortals exercised their divine abilities and hacked at the teleportation formation at the same time, while the other 3 gold immortals pushed their palms in all directions. However, the trinascent divine saber followed closely behind Feng Qinglu, as if it was a living creature with its own intelligence. Amidst a series of sizzling noises, 3 blue saber beams did not leave Feng Qinglu's body, emanating a faint chill. The saber beams were about to pierce through her body. However, a single saber beam had struck 360 white bones at the same time. This was the ability of a gold immortal. In that split second, the saber beams tore through the void and compressed the space where the 360 white bones were. Therefore, in the eyes of the onlookers, the saber beams had struck all 360 white bones at the same time. Strange, what is this place? Why is there such a great hall here? And why are there so many powerful poisonous restrictive spells? Inside Miaoying Palace, Wuxia was sitting cross-legged on the cloud bed that once belonged to Patriarch Miaoying. Feng Qingluo's body was trembling with pain. She stared fixedly at Reverend Liang and said in a deep voice, "How can a Taoist like you still have such an overall strength after being hurt by the immortal breaking talisman and immortal execution thunder? It seems there is still a huge gap between the human race and you immortals." Shrouded in dark smoke, several dozens of beast souls slammed onto the trinascent divine blade. The trinascent divine blade was Reverend Liang's most powerful divine ability, and every strike would consume 10% of his prime energy. The blade was on the verge of breaking from the impact of the beast souls, but the bright blue saber beam still shone brilliantly. It tore through the obstruction of the immortal breaking talisman and the dark smoke, then landed on the 360 white bones hovering above the teleportation formation. With a twist of his body, Wuxia transformed into a stream of innate energy and plunged into the underground of Miaoying Palace. After obtaining the diagram of Miaoying Palace's fiend formation given to him by Lord of Longyang, the ordinary restrictive spells in Miaoying Palace could no longer stop Wuxia. At least, he could travel carefully through them with innate escape art. He still could not break some of the powerful restrictive spells in Miaoying Palace, but he could still manage to walk through the restrictive spells without breaking them. Reverend Liang and his company were taken aback. Before they could see clearly what was happening around them, they saw the boy kill a Green City Heaven immortal with an immortal breaking talisman. "How dare you!" Reverend Liang bellowed furiously. Even as he bellowed, he kept injecting his immortal energy into the few gold immortal items in his body, turning them into 3 blinding lights of red, white, and blue. Suddenly, a Green City immortal lost his footing in one of the restrictive spells. 3 nether yakshas emerged soundlessly from the void and killed the heaven immortal with one strike, then dragged his soul back to the yellow spring. All the boys took out an immortal breaking talisman at the same time, reciting an incantation and throwing it out. As soon as the blade was unleashed, over 30 boys and girls who were scattered around the hall suddenly leaped to their feet. Amidst the exclamations of the other boys and girls, these over 30 boys, who seemed to be only 12 or 13 years old, incanted a spell together. Large amounts of ripples emerged from under their skins, and along with a strange creaking noise, large amounts of white bone armors drilled out from under their skins, transforming into a set of strangely exquisite white bone armors on their bodies. King Zhangqiu, who had an ambiguous relationship with Miaoying Palace, was being pestered by Lord of Longyang. With the help of Lord of Longyang, King Zhangqiu was either immersed in the pink battle, or drunk with countless fine wines. It was impossible for him to be here. "This is not us, not the restrictive spells of Green City." Reverend Liang cried out sternly. A series of cracking noises echoed out as the runes shot out from the white bones were shattered. The power of the trinascent divine blade was incredible, as the energies of water, fire, and gold had transformed into a strange newborn force. Nearly half of the white light emitting from the white bones were shattered, and about 40 to 50 of them had tiny cracks on them. Damn it! A loud cry rang out. Suddenly, a petite little girl leaped up into the air from among the boys and girls who were clad in white bone armors. Her body expanded rapidly, and in just a blink of an eye, she had grown to the size of an adult girl who was 18 or 19 years old. She was a beautiful girl with a curvaceous body and a very sexy appearance. A shrill cry echoed out as a gust of strong green wind rushed up from the top of her head, amidst which, a beast's soul of gale could be vaguely seen. The enormous divine bird spread its claws and swung them down towards Reverend Li Yang. All the fiend cultivators in Miaoing Palace strictly obeyed their posts, and dared not to take a step or say a word unless they were summoned. Miaoing Palace had a strict rule, and any violation would result in the destruction of one's soul. However, such a strict rule had given Wuxia a great advantage today. Relying on a medallion given to him by goddess Miao Xian, he went straight into the grand hall, and constructed a teleportation formation right in the center of the hall. He had long locked down the coordinates of the teleportation formation, with his mind communicating with the celestial fiend puppets in Greenwood Mountain. Wuxia felt as if he had witnessed everything that happened in Greenwood Mountain with his own eyes. The huge seal that had transformed into a small hill had been pressing down on the top of Feng Qingliu's head, following her movements. The small mountain released an invisible force that was like an invisible whirlpool in the deep sea. It firmly locked onto Feng Qingliu, causing her to slow down a lot when she turned around. If not for her beast soul being the gale, one of the fastest flying beasts under the heaven, perhaps she would have been dead by now. Suddenly, the strong wind reformed in a corner of the grand hall. 3 holes could be seen on Feng Qingliu's body, and the flesh around the wounds was slowly disintegrating. Her 2 legs also seemed to have been run over by a stone mill, and were crushed into a pile of minced meat. Only then did everyone compose themselves and look in all directions. With a single glance, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air at the same time. The rest of the Gold Immortals and Heaven Immortals of Green City had also activated their defensive immortal items, fearing that someone would use another vicious immortal-breaking talisman to attack them. They were so focused on protecting themselves that they had neglected the damage to the teleportation formation. In less than a second after Wuxia disappeared, 7 Gold Immortals of Green City, including Reverend Li Yang, as well as over 100 Heaven Immortals of Green City, emerged from the teleportation formation at the same time. Reverend Li Yang rolled up his sleeve, and threw out the several hundred boys and girls he had kept in it. "Destroy the teleportation formation," he cried out sternly. "Don't let those damn fellows catch up with us." Feng Lingling chuckled coldly. Hovering midair in the grand hall, he glanced around in surprise. If it were those top-notch third-tier gold immortals, they could kill tens of thousands of targets that were millions or even hundreds of millions of miles away at the same time with just one sword strike. As long as they were within the coverage of their divine will, they could kill the targets they wanted to kill at the same time. That was the fearsome overall strength that could destroy everything. While Reverend Li Yang was fighting, the other few gold immortals of Green City had finally struck. Chapter 515. A Fiend Formation. Feng Lingling cried out in shock. Feng Lingling gave a loud cry and spun his head to look at the teleportation formation he came from. His heart sank. He had no idea when the formation had shattered to pieces, and the shadow of a yaksha was slowly disappearing from the sky above it. He also sensed that a sticky force was slowly pressing down from the void around him. The void in all directions had been locked down, and it was impossible for him to construct a teleportation formation to escape. No one in the Great Hall dared to make any reckless moves. It was especially true for the people of Zhong Province, who had gathered around Yu Miao with extreme caution. Meanwhile, the Immortals of Green City were carefully surrounding Reverend Li Yang and the other Gold Immortals. Both sides were exchanging glances, and eventually, they all cast their gazes at the spot where the Heaven Immortal of Green City was killed. After a brief moment of pondering, Reverend Li Yang fished out a lower-grade immortal stone and threw it out. The fist-sized immortal stone, glowing faintly with a red gleam, bounced and bounced on the floor of the Great Hall. Amidst the anxious gazes of the crowd, it finally stopped on a pile of human-shaped ashes. The heaven immortal of Green City was killed by the nether Wuxia, his immortal soul brought into the yellow spring, and his immortal body burned to ashes by the ghost flame. Amidst the gray ashes, the red immortal stone glowed brilliantly. But there was no reaction from the great hall. Everyone's face darkened abruptly. The lack of reaction frightened them even more than the fact that there was a reaction. The fact that there was a reaction only proved that there was a restrictive formation lying in ambush. The fact that there was no reaction meant that the restrictive formation here was beyond their imagination. The restrictive formation here had a certain ability to distinguish between living beings, and it would not be triggered unless it was touched by a living being. A restrictive formation like this could not be constructed by an ordinary gold immortal. Reverend Li Yang opened his mouth, cold sweat trickling down his forehead. He suddenly realized that he had fallen into a great trap. Feng Lingling and the others were staring at Reverend Li Yang with great astonishment. The teleportation formation was constructed by the disciples of Green City. And if there was any mistake, it was the fault of Green City. After staring at each other for a long while, Reverend Li Yang said with a wry smile, "It seems someone has laid a trap for us." Feng Lingling stared angrily at Reverend Li Yang and snapped, "You made us step into a trap targeted at Green City." Reverend Li Yang sneered and gave Feng Lingling a fierce glare. Although he had fallen into a trap, Reverend Li Yang's heart was filled with a strange pleasure. For some reason, Reverend Li Yang felt very happy with the company of Feng Lingling and the others. While chuckling, Reverend Li Yang put his hand into his sleeve and stealthily crushed a butterfly jade pendant carved from green jade. The Grand Oracle of Zhong Province snorted coldly. He pulled out a 3 feet in diameter turtle shell, bit his tongue and spat on it. He muttered a few incantations. Suddenly, a large cloud of smoke flashed across the tortoise shell, and some images of mountains and rivers appeared on it. Amidst the mist, Patriarch Xian Yi and the other fiend immortals disappeared in a flash. Damn it! Patriarch Xian Yi from the Dark Palace in Huiming Heavenly Realm. Reverend Li Yang roared in exasperation. This is their trick. Feng Lingling gnashed his teeth and said, "I'll definitely teach these fiends a lesson after we leave this place today." Panting heavily, Feng Lingling asked Yumu, "Grand Oracle, is there any way to find out the general location of the restrictive formations here?" Yumu nodded with a solemn expression. He retracted the tortoise shell, and glanced around with a faint gray gleam shimmering in his eyes. After a long while he nodded and said, "The fiend formations here are very clever, but they are not unbreakable. Based on my years of experience in studying the formations of immortals, I can tell that no one is controlling the fiend formations here. As long as we use some spirit talismans, we can still leave this place safely." The muscles on Yumu's face twitched violently when he mentioned the word, spirit talismans. Feng Lingling understood what Yumu meant, and said immediately, "All the spirit talismans are used for the expedition against the immortals. No matter how many spirit talismans you use today, I'll ask the Directorate of Celestials in the capital city for double the amount of spirit talismans." Yumu's expression returned to normal in an instant. He gave Feng Lingling a smile and said satisfyingly, "That's great. Before we leave this great hall, we need to finish our business first." Yumu pointed a finger at Reverend Li Yang and said, "The lives of 7 heaven immortals are at stake here. We can't let the credit go to waste." Feng Lingling lightly patted the head of the serpent coiled around his body, and said with a sinister smile, "Very well. Let's kill them first before we talk about anything else. Grand Oracle, please stabilize the surrounding space, and don't let the activation of the restrictive formations delay our operation." Yumu chuckled and waved both hands. 36 huge bone talismans, each about 100 feet tall and as large as a door, emerged out of thin air right next to him. These huge bone talismans were engraved with countless runes, and inlaid with a great amount of energy stones and some other strange pearls. There were even 108 pale golden relics, each the size of a fist, embedded in their cores. Judging from the waves of Buddhist energy surging and restraining them, they were all taken out from the bodies of high-grade golden arhats. As soon as the bone talismans appeared, A large sheet of clouds spread out and filled the air. A deafening wail rang out amidst the clouds as 108 immortal souls revealed themselves, shivering and trembling. Judging from the rich golden light shrouding these immortal souls, they were all high-grade heaven immortals as well. Reverend Li Yang's face turned extremely unsightly at the sight of these bizarre bone talismans. These bone talismans used the relics of golden arhats as their energy cores, and the immortal souls of high-grade heaven immortals as their talisman spirits. Clearly, they were the most notorious talismans of the Directorate of Celestials of the human race, the immortal perishing soul-stabilizing talismans, which had a great deterrent effect on all immortals and cultivators. It was a very powerful talisman that could even threaten the lives of high-grade gold immortals. In the government of Diyu, apart from the Grand Oracle of the Directorate of Celestials of first-grade provinces, no one could possess such a talisman. Everyone, let's fight to the death. Upon seeing the 36 immortal perishing soul-stabilizing talismans, Reverend Li Yang exercised his energy essence and shot out 3 beams of blue light from the trinascent divine blade in a row. Wrapping him up, they transformed into a long beam of blue light and shot up into the sky, reaching the ceiling in just a blink of an eye. The other 6 gold immortals of Green City sighed. They gave the 36 immortal perishing soul-stabilizing talismans a helpless look, smiled bitterly, and exercised their life-saving divine abilities just like Reverend Li Yang, transforming into beams of light and fleeing from the scene. However, the 100 heaven immortals of Green City they brought with them did not have such good luck. As soon as the 36 bone talismans were unleashed, they collapsed to the ground, their bodies shrouded by the strange light and wisps of smoke that surged out of the talismans, turning their bones limp and tendons numb. Trying to flee? That's impossible. Yumu smiled arrogantly, shook his head, and said with a sigh, with the spirit talismans personally crafted by the sect elders of the Directorate of Celestials of Diyu, how could you, a few middle-grade and lower-grade gold immortals, escape? With a faint sigh, Yumu rubbed his palms together and unleashed a great sheet of bright light. The 36 spirit talismans disintegrated with a deafening boom, turning into countless blinking runes that rushed out in all directions. The surrounding void trembled, and the fleeing speed of Reverend Li Yang and the other gold immortals slowed down by several hundred times, almost as fast as the running speed of an ordinary human. Wherever the spiritual light shone, one could vaguely see countless vicious rune diagrams on the walls, ceiling, and floor of the main hall. Reverend Li Yang smiled bitterly. Sensing the frightening force pressing down from all directions, he cried out at the top of his voice, Xiandai, I know I was wrong. Save me. Save me. You are the girl I love the most. I will never seduce another female immortal again. At this critical juncture, Reverend Li Yang's cry was filled with an indescribable despair and a last glimmer of hope. While Feng Lingling and his companions were plunged into a chaotic mess in the Great Hall, Lord Longyang and King Zhangqiu were playing a game of throwing a pot at each other in King Zhangqiu's bedchamber. Instead of throwing the pot themselves, they each chose a maidservant and asked her to take the arrow without the arrowhead and throw it into a vase about 100 feet away from them, which had a hole the size of a fist. The one whose maidservant was hit by the arrow would have to drink a pot of fine wine. The maidservant chosen by Lord Longyang was very dexterous. Under his guidance, she had thrown a total of 18 to 19 arrows in a row, and King Zhangqiu had drunk a total of 18 pots of specially made fine wine. These fine wines were brewed by Miaoing Palace using various spirit fruits, and had a very strong effect on immortals. As King Zhangqiu's soul was not as strong as that of an immortal, he was already 70 to 80% tipsy. Lord Longyang kept laughing and playing with King Zhangqiu. White lotus petals kept flashing around him, within which countless images could be vaguely seen blinking. All of a sudden, the image of a great hall flashed across one of the petals next to Lord Longyang, and vaguely showed the faces of Feng Lingling and his companions. Duke of Longyang's beautiful face turned pale with fright. He pointed at the white lotus petal and cried out in alarm, "Your Highness, this is Patriarch Miao Ying's palace. Why are there so many people here?" King Zhangqiu, who was already drunk, gave the image on the petal a glance, then suddenly sprung to his feet and cried out, "Damn it! It's that old fool, Feng Lingling, the prefecture overseer of Zhong province. His backer was the arch-enemy of his father. Fuck his mother. Why was he here? Could it be that he has heard some news? Lord Longyang's face turned pale with fright as he asked anxiously, "What should we do then?" King Zhangqiu was taken aback. He wanted to say something, but his head felt dizzy. He leaned back and fell into a deep slumber. The dozens of personal guards brought here by King Zhangqiu were struck dumb. They glanced left and right, not knowing what to do. Lord Longyang's face flickered slightly as he cried out sternly, "Get some medicine to sober His Highness up now. Order the Jianlong army, hiding nearby to rush to the Northern Ocean. And get ready to rescue His Highness. Quick, quick, quick." Holding the medallion given to him by King Zhangqiu a few days ago, which represented King Zhangqiu's great power, Lord Longyang gave out a series of orders. Not daring to slack off, the personal guards bowed and received the order without hesitation, then began to move quickly according to Lord Longyang's order. The 30,000 Jianlong army soldiers brought here by King Zhangqiu and hiding in the Great Lake near the Northern Ocean immediately boarded their flying ships and rushed out of the lake, heading straight for the Northern Ocean. When they arrived above the Northern Ocean, 30 huge dragon ships plunged into the water and dove quickly towards Miaoying Palace in the abyss. Even though they were still a long distance away from Miaoying Palace, the deep, muffled beating of war drums and bugles from the flying ships had already caused the water of the Northern Ocean to churn. Chapter 516. Grinning coldly, Lord Longyang snapped in a low voice, "Fools who don't know the meaning of death. If not for the fact that your patriarch is a primordial immortal, and no one dares to provoke him, your entire clan would have been wiped out several hundred times." Lao Ai hugged Goddess Miao Xian tightly, then pursed his lips gently and said, "Our Miao Xian is really capable." Such a drastic change in contrast was so natural to Lord Longyang, without the slightest haste or abruptness. It was as if he was supposed to be such a contradictory person. As Lord Longyang's loud roar echoed out, the sound of drums and horns echoed out from the sky. The 30,000 soldiers and 30,000 flying ships of Jianlong army had arrived right above Miaoying Palace. The deep, muffled drum beats shook the surrounding seawater, causing it to surge and churn violently. White ripples that could be seen with naked eyes were swept up into the sky. His voice had barely faded when a plume of purple mist towered up into the sky from the direction of the Great Hall. Vaguely, it condensed into the shape of a jade rui scepter, spraying out a large sheet of golden light that looked like a lantern. One after another, the palaces and pavilions around the Great Hall crumbled and collapsed. The purple mist and golden light spread rapidly in all directions, accompanied by a faint immortal tune. It looked as if they were going to destroy the projection of Miaoying Palace in the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean in one fell swoop. Lord Longyang's face turned cold as he cried out sternly, "Goddess Miao Xi, enemies are invading us. Please take control of the situation quickly." Goddess Miao Xian's expression changed abruptly as she cried out furiously, "Primordial gold talisman? Bastard!" Lao Ai's face turned pale with fright. He threw Miao Feng and Miao Yu away and hugged Goddess Miao Xian tightly as he said, "Miao Xian, many gold immortals are invading us? This. How are you going to fight them alone? Why don't you ask Patriarch to kill them?" However, it was a pity that the white lotus seed could only pierce through half of the barrier. The pink light of great delight trembled, and the white lotus seed exploded with a boom, leaving a large hole with a diameter of several tens of feet. Lao Ai's furious roar rang out abruptly, "Which ignorant thief dares to break my divine ability?" With the help of the Ling Yi True Water and the cultivation base of a gold immortal, Goddess Miao Xian easily removed the influence of the wicked shape curse, restoring her original peerless appearance. On top of that, the spirit ripple True Water could strengthen the innate dark yin energy of a woman and cleanse their visage, making them more beautiful. As a result, Goddess Miao Xian now looked even more gentle and beautiful than when she was at her peak. When they arrived at the entrance of Goddess Miao Xian's bedchamber, Duke of Longyang cried out at the top of his voice, "Goddess, Goddess, Goddess Miao Xian, something bad has happened." While walking quickly, Duke of Longyang said hurriedly, "There are foreign enemies invading. Aya, it's Diyu, the prefecture overseer of Central Province, who brought a large army and charged in. What should they do? As His Highness is drunk, the only person who can take charge of the situation now is Goddess Miao Xian. With a smile on her face, Goddess Miao Xian narrowed her eyes and released her divine will to scan Miaoying Palace. Her expression flickered as she said with a cold grin. So, there is indeed an intruder? Strange, how did they manage to enter Master's Great Hall without alerting the restrictive spells outside? Why are there so many gold immortals? Do they really think Miaoying Palace is a pushover? Duke of Longyang stamped his feet in exasperation and said angrily, Goddess, don't you know what is going on in the palace? Miaoying Palace had a strict rule, and they were ordered to guard the bedchamber. As long as they did that, they would be considered to have rendered meritorious service. Even though the sky was falling and the earth was sinking, and people were being killed everywhere, it had nothing to do with them. As long as they guarded the entrance of the bedchamber, they would not break the rule and alert Goddess Miao Xian, even if there were powerful enemies invading Miaoying Palace. However, Duke of Longyang was, after all, a heaven immortal, with a few minor spells that allowed him to walk 1,000 miles across the world. He could travel several hundred feet with just one step. In just the time of a few breaths, he had arrived outside Goddess Miao Xian's bedchamber. Goddess Miao Xian and Lao Ai were passionately kissing. Both of them were so engrossed in the kiss that they had completely forgotten that there were other people around them. A sword beam flashed, and a large number of white lotus petals shot out along with it. A few female disciples of Miaoying Palace were completely engrossed in Duke of Longyang's smile. When the white lotus blotted the sky and blotted the earth came rushing toward them, they did not strike back. Instead, they greeted the white lotus with a smile on their faces. Not only did they throw themselves toward the white lotus and the sword beams, but they also forcibly suppressed their defensive immortal items, forcing them not to protect their masters. The Ling Yi True Water had also affected Goddess Miao Xian's state of mind to a certain extent. The water of extreme yin had deeply attracted Goddess Miao Xian to Lao Ai, who had an aura of extreme yang. Like the two poles of a magnet, Goddess Miao Xian's heart had long been tied to Lao Ai. That was the reason why she willingly lagged behind Lao Ai like a child bride when they walked out of the bedchamber. After kicking away the beautiful head of a female disciple, Duke of Longyang performed an incantation gesture with his left hand, and a pure white lotus seed took shape on his fingertip. With a light flick of his finger, the thumb-sized white lotus seed flew out soundlessly, colliding forcefully with the great delight Zen light that shielded the entire bedchamber. The white lotus seed flickered like a ghost, and in the blink of an eye, half of it had already pierced through the thin layer of great delight Zen light. Lord of Longyang's charming smile made the few female disciples suddenly go into a daze. When Duke of Longyang smiled in such an enchanting manner, the so-called beauty that could topple a kingdom and topple a city would be nothing more than this. But in the blink of an eye, Duke of Longyang pursed his lips and narrowed his eyes. From the charming and enchanting look, he had turned into a peerless hero, and from a pool of spring water, he had turned into a sharp steel blade. If they really disobeyed Goddess Miao Xian's order, and disturbed her with the invasion of foreign enemies, even if all the invaders were killed in the end, they would still be severely punished by the commandments of Miaoying Palace. The commandments were utterly inhumane, rigid, and inflexible. But it was the commandments that maintained the dignity of Miaoying Palace, as well as the strict hierarchy of Miaoying Palace. Duke of Longyang took a step forward impatiently, but a few female disciples immediately flew out of their immortal swords and blocked his way. One of them cried out sternly, Senior Longyang, if you dare to take another step forward, don't blame us for being rude. Goddess Miao Xian has ordered that no one is allowed to disturb her. Even if you are her honored guest, you are not allowed to take a step into this place. Lao Ai was carelessly rubbing Miao Feng and Miao Yu's bodies. He stared at Duke of Longyang indifferently and cried out, What's the big deal? Do I need a woman like you to talk nonsense here? Invasion of foreign enemies? Ha ha ha, Miaoying Palace is protected by countless restrictive spells. How is it possible for anyone to invade? Goddess Miao Xian hugged Lao Ai tightly. She looked into his eyes with a tender and affectionate expression as she said in a very gentle voice, Brother Lao AI, don't be fooled by their numbers. As long as Miao Xian controls the restrictive spells in Miaoing Palace, even if there are hundreds or thousands of gold immortals here, they will still be killed. Duke of Longyang's expression flickered as he cried out sternly, "Fellow Taoists, we are facing a formidable enemy. Why are you still playing tricks here?" A few female disciples of Miaoing Palace were standing outside the bedchamber. Their faces turned pale with fright when they saw Duke of Longyang shouting and yelling. Hastily, they pointed at Duke of Longyang and snapped, "Senior, even though you are Goddess Miao Xian's honored guest, please leave this place at once. This is the bedchamber of Goddess Miaoing Palace, not a place where you can make a ruckus at will." Goddess Miao Xian smiled indifferently, then turned to Duke of Longyang and said indifferently, "It is just a trivial matter. Why do you need to summon the army, fellow Taoist Longyang?" Jianlong army was rushing down from the sky, and for a moment, the three parties bumped into each other. The female disciples of Miaoing Palace shook their heads, not daring to let Duke of Longyang barge into the bedchamber. Together with a few guards of King Zhangqiu, Duke of Longyang's pretty face turned cold. Holding a sword in his left hand and lifting the front of his loose robe with his right hand, he strode quickly into Miaoing Palace. There were restrictive spells in every corner of Miaoing Palace, and flying in the sky was strictly prohibited, as one could easily be killed. Therefore, Duke of Longyang had no choice but to walk quickly on the ground, following a specially prepared safe path. The white lotus gently slid across the bodies of the few female disciples, cutting them open and shattering their immortal souls and fleshly bodies. The white and flawless lotus clung to their beautiful bodies, absorbing the golden blood drop by drop. Gradually, the once pure white petals were dyed with a magnificent golden hue. Duke of Longyang's pretty face darkened with anger when he heard Lao Ai's words. He gave Lao Ai a fierce glare. If not for the tacit understanding between both of them, and the fact that they were all in the same boat, serving Wuxia's plan, he would have swung his sword and killed Lao Ai already. Madman Shui was blocking the path in the garden, but when he saw that it was Duke of Longyang and his men, he quickly bowed slightly and greeted Duke of Longyang, then followed closely behind Duke of Longyang into the bedchamber. While running, Madman Shui asked, "What happened, Senior Longyang?" Goddess Miao Xian, who was draped in a light veil that exposed most of her fair skin, gave the few corpses lying on the ground a smile. Wherever her gaze passed, the broken flesh and blood would melt like snow under the sunlight, and the ground would be as clean as before in just a blink of an eye. A large sheet of pinkish Buddhist light enveloped the bedchamber, while the great joy Zen light unleashed by Lao Ai had completely sealed off all the living beings inside and outside. Duke of Longyang's voice was blocked by the great joy Zen light, and Goddess Miao Xian could not hear it. Putting on an anxious look, Duke of Longyang cried out, "Get out of here now! I have something important to tell Goddess. How dare you mess up the important matter? Can you bear the consequences?" Lao Ai's cursing stopped abruptly, and the great joy Zen light that blanketed the entire bedchamber retracted. Not long after that, the front door of the bedchamber opened with a loud rumble. Bare-chested and clad only in a pair of underpants, Lao Ai swaggered out with Miao Feng and Miao Yu in his arms, who were nearly naked. Behind Lao Ai was a stunningly beautiful lady who was willing to stay one step behind him, assuming an obedient and submissive posture. She was none other than Goddess Miao Xian. Goddess Miao Xian and Lao Ai's lips parted abruptly. Their lips stretched about 3 inches apart, and when they finally parted, they even produced a loud squeaking noise. As both of them were immortals with profound cultivation bases, their breaths were very long, and the squeaking noise when their lips parted was very clear and melodious. Drenched in blood, Reverend Li Yang and 6 other gold immortals of Green City rushed out of the broken hall, screaming and screaming. Surrounded by the purple cloud, they cursed and fled toward the ocean. Behind them, Feng Lingling and the others were chasing after them, their faces unsightly. Feng Lingling and his company were obviously wounded, and their bodies were stained with blood. Madman Shui knew exactly what was going on. The reason he followed Duke of Longyang so closely was because he was worried about his own life. But in the presence of a few imperial guards of King Zhangqiu, Madman Shui had to be very careful. and he had to pretend that he knew nothing about what had happened. Madman Shui was taken aback. He jumped a step back and stared at Duke of Longyang with a terrified expression. The Great Joy Zen Light was a mystic technique cultivated by Lao AI, and it possessed all kinds of magical powers. Yet, the lotus seeds unleashed by Duke of Longyang could penetrate the Great Joy Zen Light. What did this mean? Was Duke of Longyang's cultivation technique the nemesis of Lao AI's Great Sun magic? Chapter 517. The Grand Oracle of Diyu Province, the Grand Punishment Minister, the Military Minister, and the others had already leaped toward Chi-Chi. Their targets were the other few gold immortals of Green City. As long as they could kill all 7 gold immortals of Green City, they would be able to obtain the huge military credit. Feng Jupin would be promoted to a higher rank because of the military credit, and many of Yuzong and the other gold immortals' descendants would be able to share the credit as well. There was nothing more delightful to them than the continuous promotion of their descendants. While Lord Longyang and Lao AI were carrying out their plan, the battle in the Great Hall was already very fierce, breaking all spells with brute force. Feng Lingling roared. Suddenly, a pitch-black beast flashed behind him. The beast looked like a tiger with a single horn on its head, and 4 hooves shaped like a qilin, but with sharp dragon claws. Its muscles were bulging, and it emanated a mighty and intimidating force. It was an ancient beast, the Thunder Stampede, famous for its innate strength, and its ability to control the power of the earth and unleash earth elemental divine thunders to attack its enemies. A plume of purple mist towered into the sky, shattering the surrounding Great Hall, and condensing into the shape of a Rui scepter, shooting out countless golden specks that shot in all directions. Crack! A tiny human statue carved out of white bones inside the storage bag, hanging on Feng Lingling's waist, shattered into pieces. The shattering curse had worked, as it was supposed to tear Feng Lingling's body into pieces. But the bone statue was a defensive treasure he had obtained from the secret palace of Diyu Dynasty, through a secret channel at a sky-high price. Although the power of the shattering curse was very strong, all the damage was borne by the bone statue. With a flip of his palm, Reverend Li Yang fished out a pale green Bodhi leaf. The leaf was sparsely covered with runes that looked like a few earthworms. At first glance, they looked like runes, but if one were to take a closer look, they would find that they were just scribbles. The Divine Sealing Spirit Locking Formation was a formation invented by the wise men of the human race in response to the characteristics of powerful immortals, and was specifically designed to be used in battles against immortals. Just like the Nether Ocean Dark Gold Copper, the formation could absorb and isolate all the natural energy. If a cultivator was trapped in a formation and lacked the nourishment of spiritual energy, it would be incredible if they could only use 30% of their divine abilities and secret arts. Even if a magic spell that had already taken shape was blasted into the formation, a large amount of spiritual energy would be immediately extracted, and the power of the spell would be reduced by at least half. The beast's soul fused with Feng Lingling's body, and the power of the beast's soul was instantly transformed into his divine energy. All of a sudden, a yellow thunderbolt burst out of Feng Lingling's body, and countless thick yellow thunderbolts flickered on his mace, filling the air with deafening thunderclaps. Abruptly, Feng Lingling's body expanded a few times as he exerted all his strength and swung the mace down viciously. The 2 Qingqing elders beside him let out a furious roar at the same time, and 2 immortal swords shot out toward Chi-Chi. After that, one of the elders cast a breaking spell on Feng Lingling, while the other cast a body-freezing spell on him. Dozens of formations had sealed off the natural energy in the surroundings, and the spells cast by hundreds of oracles had suppressed the gold immortal items in the bodies of the 7 gold immortals. The 7 gold immortals were like dead meat on a chopping board, and the great merit was right in front of them. Feng Lingling grinned hideously. With just one strike he had defeated the 2 gold immortals from Qingcheng, then swung his mace toward Reverend Li Yang's head. It was the divine ability of the Gale Divine Bird, a mysterious and unfathomable divine ability. Even a top-tier gold immortal could hardly compress and purify the 9 heavens' dark wind. As a military officer of the human race, it was impossible for Feng Qinglu to cultivate any divine ability or magic. However, as she had the beast soul of Gale with her, she could easily use the divine ability to hurt her enemies. At this point, Feng Qinglu had fused her Gale beast soul into her body, and a pair of huge green wings appeared on her back. The feathers on the wings gently swayed in the wind, like countless thin blades tearing through the air, emitting a buzzing sound. The enormous energy brought by all the beast souls of Gale in Feng Qinglu's body turned into a rolling hurricane and rushed into the spear. Although the tip of the spear was still several hundred feet away from Reverend Li Yang, the sharp force had already shaken the defensive barrier around him. Hundreds of yellow thunderbolts smashed viciously on the bodies of the two gold immortals from Qingcheng, charring them and causing dark smoke to rise from their bodies. They also had defensive gold immortal weapons with them, but an inexplicable force was suppressing them, making them shiver inside their bodies and unable to come out to protect themselves. As the mace smashed down, Feng Lingling's skinny arms suddenly expanded to 3 times their original size, and became as thick as a pillar. Then he wielded the mace with a frightening physical strength, causing a pitch-black gust of wind to emerge from the tip of the mace, which then smashed down with an ear-piercing screech. Reverend Li Yang was troubled by the Gale spirit shadow. His immortal energy was tumbling violently, and he could not cast any immortal magic to defend himself. Reverend Li Yang shuddered as the breeze entered his body. It was not a wind that could exist in nature, but the gale of the 9th heaven, which was extracted from the 9 heavens by the divine bird Gale, and was capable of breaking the chaos and tearing apart all the physical existences between heaven and earth. After being purified by Gale using its prime divine ability in the pouch, it had transformed into a Gale spirit shadow, which could melt all the things in the world and turn them invisible. It was as if Feng Lingling had already seen the look of Reverend Li Yang, and he said ferociously, "Jiu Jiner, let me claim the first credit for you." Reverend Li Yang's face turned pale with pain, and when he saw dozens of formations taking shape and the natural energy in the surroundings decreasing rapidly, his face turned even more unsightly. Before Reverend Li Yang could come up with a solution, Feng Lingling had already donned a thick and heavy black armor, and was holding a 24-feet-long mace with both hands. With a loud cry, he raised the mace and smashed it down toward Reverend Li Yang's head. Immediately after that, a beam of white light shot out from beside Feng Lingling, as a bone talisman silently turned into a wisp of green smoke and dissipated in the air. The spell cast by the other gold immortal collided with the white light, which produced a few cracking noises and froze in midair. Meanwhile, Feng Lingling had already rushed out of the white light, and smashed the mace down toward Reverend Li Yang's head. 2 immortal swords of the same grade as gold immortal items stirred the void, turning the void into a mess like porridge. Both immortal swords contained an extremely mysterious power of law. The void was shattered, and all the natural energy was divided into the energies of 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and wind, transforming into the shadows of the 4 sacred beasts: azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise. But a mere Bodhi leaf was emanating a dreadful pressure that made one despair. Just as the leaf was held in his hand, Feng Lingling and the others had retreated in a panic, at a speed twice faster than when they came. This was the scene that Lord of Longyang and the others saw, when the Great Hall was destroyed and Reverend Li Yang and the other gold immortals of Green City fled in panic. The mace was forged by a master craftsman of the human race using 4 special materials, namely Huyang red copper, Minyang green iron, Anyang white gold, and Kavyang silver essence. They were both heavy and hard, and at the same time could isolate all energy and immortal energies. The mace had a very strong defense against the magic and thunder spells of immortals, and could not even produce a wisp of smoke or dust when struck by the thunder spells of ordinary lower-tier gold immortals. Reverend Li Yang looked at the mace and suddenly burst into a wild laughter. Prefecture Overseer of Zhong Province, you must have been fooled. Who told you that there is no almighty expert behind Green City? My patriarch has become the disciple of some almighty expert, and is now the successor of that sect master. How dare you kill me? Feng Qinglu laughed complacently, sheathed the spear, and retreated hastily behind the 12 oracles of the Directorate of Celestials, who were ready to attack. The 12 oracles were holding bone staffs made of spirit bones in their hands, and were silently reciting a profound incantation to form a deification energy confinement formation, sealing off all the ripples of natural energy in the surroundings. Feng Lingling had arrived with an army just as Reverend Li Yang had severely wounded Feng Qinglu with the trinascent divine blade and the Great Seal. In a flurry, a few oracles used talismans to disperse the strange force of the trinascent divine blade near her wound, and then applied it to the wound with an expensive ointment specially made for the noble generals of the Yu dynasty. In just a few words, she had fully recovered, and her combative strength had been restored by more than 90%. A loud boom rang out, and 2 gold immortals of Green City howled in pain at the same time. They coughed up blood and flew backward, while 2 immortal swords spun and followed them as they fled in panic. The 2 gold immortal swords had dozens of cracks of various sizes on them, and countless thunderbolts could be vaguely seen flashing in them. Yumu had sealed off the surrounding space with the immortal slaying energy confinement talisman, and with the help of the spirit talismans made by the strongest great oracles of the human race, he had temporarily isolated all the restrictive spells and formations in the surroundings, successfully turning the entire hall into a safe space. After that, Feng Qinglu was the first to strike. He thrust his spear forward and thrust it straight at Reverend Li Yang's heart. What was worse was that she was easily wounded by Reverend Li Yang just now. In his mind, Feng Qinglu was not an opponent worthy of his attention. Therefore, when Reverend Li Yang was not paying attention, Feng Qinglu seized the opportunity and sent a wisp of wind spirit shadow into his body. At this moment, apart from these 12 oracles, there were hundreds of other oracles who had constructed dozens of identical deification energy confinement formations. They firmly sealed off the entire hall, isolating all the natural energy in the surroundings. After retreating into one of the formations, Feng Qinglu pointed his finger at Reverend Li Yang and said with a bright smile, "What else can you do to me, Oxnose?" Reverend Li Yang, whose immortal body was on the verge of melting because of the dark wind spirit shadow, gave a wry smile and spat on the Bodhi leaf resolutely. As the void was sealed off by the immortal slaying energy confinement talisman, the speed of Reverend Li Yang's escape beam had become much slower. Feng Qingliu's speed was extremely fast. His spear pierced over from afar, and the spear force collided with his protective golden immortal artifact, creating a large ripple of light rain. However, the invisible spear intent had already turned into an invisible breeze and entered his body, rapidly blowing through his meridians. Chapter 518. Jianlong Army. Sky Strike. Just as Reverend Li Yang and the other gold immortals rushed out of Miaoing Palace with the help of the primordial gold talisman, they bumped head-on into the 30 flying ships of Jianlong Army. Reverend Li Yang's momentum was too great, and the cloud formed from intertwining purple mists rushed straight toward Jianlong Army. At first glance, it looked like a frontal attack. Instinctively, the captain of Jianlong Army gave the order to attack. The Sky Strike formation was one of the standard offensive formations of the Great Yu Army, a formation most commonly used to attack targets from high altitudes. The Sky Strike formation combined both offense and defense, not only possessing a powerful offensive strength, but also the ability to lock down the void and slow down the enemy's escape. It was the favorite large-scale formation of the Great Yu Army when they were hunting immortals. As the order was given, the bottom planks of the 30 flying ships suddenly opened up, and large curved decks spread out in all directions amidst a dim light. More than 6,000 curved planks of 30 giant flying ships connected with each other in midair, forming a huge triangular rune formation. These planks were densely inlaid with countless spirit bones. Together with some runes drawn with blood, the three-dimensional runes kept absorbing the surrounding natural energy, causing the seawater of the dark abyss to surge violently. In the blink of an eye, a blinding light burst out of the huge triangular rune formation, and a triangular beam of light shot down and enveloped Reverend Li Yang and his company. After the bottom planks of the 30 flying ships flew out, 600 crystal pillars that looked like multifaceted pyramids were revealed. Tens of thousands of energy stones of various sizes were inlaid on these crystal pillars, and at the top of each pillar was an upper-grade immortal stone that was polished into the shape of a cone. As the captain of Jianlong Army gave the order, 600 crystal pillars shot out a strong light at the same time. Runes could be vaguely seen flickering in the crystal pillars, and a powerful energy fluctuation that made Miaoying Palace tremble slightly. Reverend Li Yang and his company, who were flying at top speed with the primordial gold talisman in their hands, felt their bodies tremble. The triangular beam of light came crashing down, and the void around them suddenly became stagnant and folded rapidly. Every inch of the void was now 10,000 miles long, and the speed at which they were flying upward had become tens of thousands of times slower than the speed of a snail. Reverend Li Yang could not help but grumble inwardly. He knew very well the origin of the Bodhi leaf. Although it was a primordial gold talisman bestowed by a great divine ability, this talisman was more focused on saving one's life. Its lethality was not strong, and it did not have much additional power. Trapped by the Sky Strike formation of the Jianlong army, the talisman could not break the restrictive spell quickly. If the Sky Strike formation kept attacking him, even a primordial gold talisman created by a primordial immortal would be broken one day. Let's risk our lives. Reverend Li Yang laughed bitterly when he saw the glaring crystal pillars underneath the 30 flying ships. The crystal pillars were likely the immortal end spirit radiance blast that the Diyu dynasty specifically used to fight against immortal immortals. A casual attack from each of the crystal pillars was comparable to a low-grade heavenly immortal. As the number of spirit stones and immortal stones kept increasing, a full power attack from any one of the crystal pillars was comparable to a peak-level heavenly immortal. If the offensive force of 600 crystal pillars were to be concentrated at one point, its lethality would be comparable to that of a gold immortal. Even Reverend Li Yang dared not to let 600 immortal end spirit radiance blast attack him. Reverend Li Yang had no choice but to risk his life. Using the primordial gold talisman to protect his fellow sect members, the mountain-shaped seal flew out of his sleeve, transforming into a huge mountain, about 1 mile in circumference, hovering above their heads. At the same time, the mountain was trying its best to absorb the surrounding natural energy, the rich water element energy at the bottom of the northern abyss, and the fire element energy from the underground fire energy veins in the deep ocean were being sucked into the mountain. The other 6 gold immortals of Green City had done the same thing. They had unleashed their prime magical treasures, which they had cultivated with their lives, and were ready to join hands with Reverend Li Yang to destroy the 30 flying ships of Jianlong army. Only by doing so would they have a chance to escape. Suddenly, a dazzling light burst out from the dark bottom of the ocean. 600 immortal end spirit radiance blasts had unleashed their strongest attack at the same time, aiming at Reverend Li Yang. A vast expanse of seawater was vaporized in an instant, and the rapidly expanding gas exploded, opening up a large hole with a diameter of over 1,000 miles. The tremendous pressure of the surrounding seawater bounced back, quickly compressing the size of the hole. The violent impact had shaved off a very high layer of the mountain ridges at the bottom of the ocean. The purple mist transformed from the primordial gold talisman had tightly wrapped around Reverend Li Yang and the other gold immortals. 600 strong beams of light gathered above their heads, pushing them several tens of miles down to the bottom of the ocean, nearly crashing into Miaoying Palace. Right at this moment, Reverend Li Yang cried out a furious cry. A strong beam of blue and red light shot out from the seal above his head as it transformed into a strange spirit beast with a large body that looked like a ball. With its mouth wide open, it sped towards the 30 flying ships hovering above. One after another, the other 6 gold immortals unleashed their prime immortal artifacts, which were powerful enough to transform into their true forms. One after another, 6 rare birds and strange beasts let out shrill cries as they charged towards Jianlong army amidst the strong beams of light. The huge talisman formation transformed from Jianlong army's Sky Strike formation pressed down abruptly, while the triangular beam of light was compressed inwardly. In just a blink of an eye, it had shrunk to only several hundred feet in diameter. The 7 gold immortal artifacts collided with the Sky Strike formation amidst jarring whistles. A tiny dark beam shot out of the void, spreading several tens of miles away in just a blink of an eye. Everything within several tens of miles had vanished, including the Sky Strike formation. Among the 7 gold immortal artifacts, Only Reverend Li Yang's seal flew back amidst a forlorn howl. 13 of the 30 flying ships had turned into wisps of smoke, along with the tens of thousands of human warriors on board. The Sky Strike formation was shattered. Charge out! Reverend Li Yang cried out sternly. Feng Lingling exerted all his strength and smashed the mace into the purple Rui scepter, which was transformed from a primordial gold talisman. A crystal-clear explosion rang out as the mace in Feng Lingling's hand shattered into countless iron powders. Blood sprayed from his 7 apertures as he retreated hastily. At the same time he cursed under his breath. It is indeed a primordial gold talisman personally crafted by a primordial immortal. Bastard! Which bastard tricked me? Having a primordial gold immortal as one's backer and not having one were two completely different things. The fact that Reverend Li Yang was able to produce a primordial gold talisman proved that Green City had formed a relationship with at least one primordial immortal. By attacking the immortals of Green City with his men, Feng Lingling had unintentionally offended a primordial immortal. It was a well-known fact that almighty experts like primordial immortals valued their reputation the most. Even if someone touched a fallen leaf in front of their door, they would most likely call their friends and wipe out the entire clan. Green City had a relationship with a primordial immortal. This was definitely a heavy psychological blow to Feng Lingling. There was no way he could hide the fact that he had attacked the immortals of Green City. It would not take long before the news reached the ears of that primordial immortal, who was related to Green City. Most likely, that primordial immortal had already found out about it, and was paying close attention to this place with his mighty divine ability. Unknowingly, Feng Lingling had formed a grudge with a primordial immortal. It was definitely not a pleasant thing. Nevertheless, before launching the attack, Feng Lingling had spent a great price to contact those DU officials from Feng Clan in outer heavenly realms through a voice-transmitting formation, asking them to help him find out who was the backer of Green City. Nobody had told him that Green City had hooked up with a primordial immortal. Was it not because they wanted to teach him a lesson? Bastard, bastard, a bunch of ungrateful bastards. While coughing blood, Feng Lingling retreated hastily while roaring at Reverend Li Yang. Fellow Taoists, let's just forget about what happened today. I was deceived by someone, and I really should not have attacked the fellow Taoists of Green City. Reverend Li Yang was struck dumb. The 6 elders of Green City were dumbfounded. Yu Mu and the other important ministers of Zhong Province exchanged glances, and none of them could say a word for a long while. The general of Jianlong army looked at the remaining 17 flying ships, feeling like weeping but having no tears. He had an urge to slit his own throat. Hiding off to the side, Wuxia was struck dumb as well. He stared at Feng Lingling furiously. Why is this old fellow so disappointing? Is he afraid of a primordial gold talisman? How is Wuxia going to fish in troubled waters if you don't do anything? How is he going to fight with someone else? How is he going to kill someone with a borrowed knife? This old fellow is too disappointing. Wuqi's lips were trembling with anger. Just as things were about to go beyond Wuxia and Su Qin's plan, a furious roar suddenly rang out from a corner of Miaoying Palace. Who dares to touch my army? King Zhangqiu rushed over menacingly with a dozen guards. Feng Lingling saw King Zhangqiu, and the latter saw Feng Lingling. Shaking his head, King Zhangqiu snorted coldly, spun and left. He had just woken up by the hangover medicine, and his head was still dizzy and swollen. It suddenly dawned on him that he seemed to have seen Feng Lingling and his company before he fainted. How could he have forgotten about it? Why did he rush out like that? But Feng Lingling refused to let him go. He pointed at King Zhangqiu and bellowed, King Zhangqiu, why are you here with your Jianlong army? King Zhangqiu turned and pointed at Feng Lingling as he snapped, Feng Lingling, who do you think you are? How dare you talk to me like that? Do I have to inform you when I'm out hunting with my Jianlong army? You are the prefecture overseer of Zhong Province, and you have no right to interfere with my business. While Feng Lingling and King Zhangqiu were confronting each other, Reverend Li Yang knew that this was a dangerous place, and he could not stay any longer. In that case, this place has nothing to do with us anymore. Farewell. With a swirl of purple mist, Reverend Li Yang was about to flee with the 6 elders. But Goddess Miao Xian's rebuke could be heard coming from afar. Where did this filthy Taoist come from? How dare you attack my meowing palace? You bastards! You have destroyed my master's bedchamber, and you still think you can escape? Suddenly, Meowing Palace trembled. Dazzling ghost flames and evil auras burst out from the 4 bone pagodas at the 4 corners of the palace, transforming into 4 enormous celestial fiends that surrounded Reverend Li Yang and his company. A fiend light flickered, and Goddess Miao Xian appeared with Lao Ai, Lord Longyang, and a few others. Upon seeing Lord Longyang, King Zhongqiu quickly greeted him and said with a gentle smile, "Longyang, are you all right?" Feng Lingling immediately turned to look at Lord Longyang. Standing next to Goddess Miao Xian, Lord Longyang was very eye-catching. Feng Lingling was first struck dumb by Lord Longyang's peerless charm. Then he turned to look at King Zhongqiu and bellowed, "King Zhongqiu, how dare you collude with an immortal?" It was obvious that Lord Longyang and Goddess Miao Xian were on the same side, and King Zhongqiu had just walked out of Meowing Palace. Did this not prove that King Zhongqiu and Goddess Miao Xian were colluding? In Diyu Dynasty, colluding with immortals from outer domain was a felony that could get one's entire clan wiped out. King Zhongqiu's face fell as he cried out sternly, "Goddess Miao Xian, let's join hands and kill them all." Goddess Miao Xian was taken aback. Suddenly, she threw her head back and gave a shrill cry into the sky. "Kill! Kill them all!" Chapter 519. As Goddess Miao Xian let out a furious roar, all the disciples of Meowing Palace revealed themselves. 36 fiend guards lined up in front of Reverend Li Yang and his company. Among them, there were 12 gold immortals and 24 high-tier heaven immortals. Reverend Li Yang and his company had suffered a series of severe injuries, and the head-on clash with Jianlong army had cost 6 gold immortal elders their prime immortal items, greatly weakening their overall strength. If not for the primordial gold talisman still protecting them, the joint force of 36 fiend guards could have taken their lives in an instant. Meanwhile, 108 longbow men who had become heaven immortals had expanded their bodies to several hundred feet tall, surrounding Feng Lingling and the other ministers of Zhong province, who had an unsightly expression on their faces. Although the essence of these longbow men's immortal energy was still that of a heaven immortal, they had an endless amount of immortal energy stored in their enormous bodies. In terms of actual combat prowess, they could be regarded as freakishly powerful existences who could fight against low-tier heaven immortals. 108 longbow men of heaven immortal realm were more than enough to deter Feng Lingling and his company from acting rashly. On top of the 4 bone towers, the shadows of 4 gigantic celestial fiends were emanating a monstrous fiend flame. They stood on the bottom of the ocean and stretched out their arms, sealing off the surrounding void with a boundless fiend energy. Layers upon layers of ripples were rippling around them. It was a sign that the dimension was being sealed by layers upon layers of restrictive spells. Unless someone could break through all the fiend formations and restrictive spells of Meowing Palace, the spatial seal would not lose its effect. In addition to these high-level combatants, nearly 10,000 disciples, serving ladies, and guards of Meowing Palace flew out in a disorderly manner. Among these lower-grade disciples, the strongest ones possessed the cultivation base of heaven immortals, while most of them were low-grade cultivators of nascent soul realm or Jindan realm. Although these low-grade cultivators possessed weak overall strength, they all had a few talismans given to them by Meowing Palace's gold immortals and high-tier heaven immortals, as well as a few Een Thunders with incredible destructive power. Therefore, the threat they posed was more troublesome than those high-tier immortals. On top of that, the remaining 17 flying ships of Jianlong army had once again deployed the sky-striking formation, and the hundreds of oracles were ready to strike with all their might. Hundreds of huge bone talismans were hovering above the ships, emanating powerful energy waves. Meowing Palace and King Zhongqiu were ready to strike with all their might. Staring viciously at King Zhongqiu, Feng Lingling grinned hideously and said, "Assaulting the prefecture overseer of a first-grade province is a crime punishable by the annihilation of an entire clan." King Zhongqiu took a deep breath and resumed the dull, lifeless look he had when Wuxia first met him. If I kill all of you, who will know that I did it? He said in a deep voice. Father's fief is 3,000 provinces away from the central province, and 7,000 provinces away from here. Who would believe that this king is so bored that he would come here to kill you? Laughing strangely, King Zhangqiu said in a gloomy voice, "This is the dark abyss of the Northern Ocean. Even if you die here, no one will know what happened here." Zhongzhou was a first-grade upper state, and its annual output was huge. Zhongzhou's beauties had always been famous in Diyu. After killing you, Feng Lingling, and wiping out your branch of Feng clan, perhaps I can still send a few subordinates to Zhong province to take over your position as the prefecture overseer. Feng Lingling glanced to the left and right, then shook his head and said with a sigh, "You will have to be able to do that." King Zhangqiu waved his hand, then turned to look at the flying ships of Jianlong army and cried out sternly, "Are you still alive, Tu Meng? Why are you in a daze?" A large sheet of bright light shone from the flying ship in the middle of Jianlong army's fleet, while a burly voice said in a low, muffled voice, "My lord, I'm not in a daze. I've already informed Lord Lao Wang about what happened here, and Lao Wang is on his way here with his men." A cold sneer echoed out, as dozens of figures flashed out from the flying ship at the same time, and came before the crowd. Among these people, the most eye-catching one was the middle-aged man in the middle. He was clad in a long black robe, with 5 obsidian rings on the fingers of his left hand. His skin was slightly dark, and he had a thick beard. The man's long hair hung loosely over his shoulders, and his square face was filled with a graceful bearing. He gave Feng Lingling a deep look with his pitch-black eyes, then suddenly sighed and said, "I'm fine. What are you doing here?" Feng Lingling's body trembled slightly as he bowed to the man and said, "Feng Lingling, the prefecture overseer of Zhong province, offers greetings, King Baishan." Hiding in the sand at the bottom of the sea, Wuxia began to recall the information he obtained. The nobility of kings in Diyu dynasty was divided into 4 grades, Shan, Shui, Zhou, and Cheng, and the nobility of Shan was further divided into 4 grades, Shan, Feng, Qiu, and Ling. As the name suggested, King Baishan was a king of the 1st grade in Diyu dynasty, which proved that he was a direct descendant of the Diyu imperial clan. Otherwise, he would not have been conferred such a title. As for King Baishan's son, King Zhangqiu, he was a king of the 3rd grade in the 1st grade, which made him one of the most prestigious titles in Diyu dynasty. Although Feng Lingling was the prefecture overseer of Zhong province, in charge of the 300 provinces under Zhong province, he could only bow and salute King Baishan, who was a member of the Diyu imperial clan and had the title of king. He could not even look King Baishan in the eye. Not only Feng Lingling, all the generals and courtiers under him were bowing their heads and lowering their eyelids, not daring to look at King Baishan. "TSK, what is this?" King Baishan shook his head and said, "Kill yourself, Feng Lingling. I'll only kill all the men in your branch, and I'll bring all the women into my palace. If they can give birth to a son or a daughter, your branch will have a successor." Feng Lingling's body froze. He slowly raised his head and stared at King Baishan with a cold grin as he said angrily, "Your Highness, are you asking me to kill myself?" King Baishan gave Feng Lingling a look, then turned to Goddess Miao Xian and said, "How is your appearance, Goddess?" Goddess Miao Xian smiled charmingly as she nodded slowly and said, "Yes, Your Highness. I've recently obtained some Lingyi true water, and it is indeed an extraordinary treasure. Do you think I look good, Your Highness? How do I compare with those concubines of yours?" King Baishan gave a fierce glance at Goddess Miao Xian's chest, then said with a faint smile, "How can they be compared with you, Goddess? They are just some ordinary people. Those women are just tools for me to reproduce my descendants. I'll have to trouble you to join hands with me and kill all these people today. Otherwise, if the news is leaked, it will bring me some inconvenience, and it will not do any good to Patriarch Miaoing, right?" Goddess Miao Xian giggled. She stuck out her chest proudly and gave Lao Ai a glance with her beautiful eyes as she said coolly, "Then let's get it done." Reverend Li Yang, who was trapped in the purple mist and dared not to move under the protection of the primordial gold talisman, suddenly roared, "Prefecture overseer of Zhong province, why don't we join hands and fight our way out of this place? The grudges just now have been written off. Now you and I have to work together to rush out of this place. Otherwise we'll both be killed. Feng Lingling answered. He waved his hand at Reverend Li Yang, and Reverend Li Yang clenched his fist. The void between them rippled, and in the next moment, Reverend Li Yang and the other 6 sovereigns arrived between Feng Lingling and the others. Then they clapped their hands and swore an oath at the fastest speed, that they would work together to break out of the encirclement, and that all the enmity would be settled, and they would not pursue the matter any further. Goddess Miao Xian giggled, shook her head and said with a sigh, "It's useless." King Baishan sighed softly as well. His cold gaze swept across Feng Lingling and the others as he said in a deep voice, "It's useless. Since I've come here personally, I won't allow you to escape. TSK Feng Lingling, why did you come to Northern Ocean? This place is notorious for being a dangerous place. Don't you know that people will die here?" Feng Lingling clenched his jaws and did not say a word. In his mind he was cursing King Baishan. Only a grandson like you would be willing to come here. If he was not set up, why would he come to this deadly place? When he saw King Zhangqiu and Goddess Miao Xian, he knew that he had stumbled upon a very serious matter. And when he saw King Baishan coming here personally through a teleportation formation, he knew that once this matter was exposed, it would be a disaster that would break the heavens. Colluding with immortals from outer heavenly realms was an iron law issued by the previous human emperors. As a descendant of the imperial clan, King Baishan was given a vast fief that was 10 times the size of Feng Lingling's fief. He was an important figure in the Yu imperial clan who controlled all the forces on Pangu continent, and yet he was actually colluding with heaven immortals from outer heavenly realms. At the thought of something hidden in this, Feng Lingling felt a chill run down his spine. He had really run into the tip of a blade. Gritting his teeth, Feng Lingling cried out fiercely, "Everyone, only by working together and escaping from here will we have a chance of survival. King Diyu is colluding with immortals, and I don't need to explain the meaning of this. King Baishan will never spare any of us." King Baishan nodded slowly and said, "Yes, only a dead man, and a dead man whose soul has vanished, can keep a secret." King Baishan chuckled and stepped back for a long distance, then growled in a deep voice, "Do it! Kill them!" Bright lights kept flashing from the 17 flying ships up above, as a large number of private soldiers from King Baishan's fief were rushing here through the teleportation formation. Gradually, they were surrounded from all directions. Feng Lingling's face darkened abruptly. As King Baishan gave the order, the fiend immortals of Miaoing Palace and King Baishan's private army cried out at the same time. They threw out spirit talismans and een thunders like raindrops, while King Baishan's private army, Chi-Chi, pulled the bowstrings and unleashed countless arrows at Feng Lingling and his company from all directions. "Everyone follow me!" Feng Lingling cried out at the top of his voice. The several thousand men brought here by Feng Lingling turned to look at him at the same time. With a loud cry, Feng Lingling spun and plunged straight down to the bottom of the ocean. There was no way out above or around them, and the only way out was through the extremely vicious innate evil energy of supreme Yin energy that sprayed out from the dark abyss. Even ordinary gold immortals would not dare to touch it. It was the only way out for Feng Lingling and his company. The cultivation technique of the human race allowed them to forge their true bodies with the purple energy that was unique to Pangu continent. The fleshly bodies that were cleansed by the purple energy had a strong repelling effect on all the natural energies in the world. Although the innate evil energy of supreme Yin energy was vicious, the body of an ordinary human soldier had a very strong resistance to it. In contrast, even a fiend immortal like Goddess Miao Xian did not dare to approach the dark abyss. Hiding in the sand at the bottom of the ocean, Wuxia smiled satisfyingly. "Feng Lingling, your actions are indeed in line with Wuxia's wishes." Grinning, Wuxia transformed into a very fine stream of innate energy and followed closely behind Feng Lingling and his company. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.